What is going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 3 live stream for the Cognizant Classic. Gonna get you ready for all that moving day exposure with a look at the DFS slate. Also, what we're doing for the prop and the betting boards as well. But any questions, any player pool deep dives that you want from me, go ahead and let me know in the live chat. We're gonna go through the weather, ownership, some shots gained metrics, and building a player pool for Showdown. And then also course averages, also some pin locations for tomorrow, and how to attack that side of things. And we're gonna go through the boards, try and see if there's some exposure in props that we can tail and give you guys something to play for tomorrow as well. But other than that, let's go out there and crush our exposure on top of what was already a massive day today. And you guys may have already seen it over there on my X/Twitter, but we ended up killing it for DFS. These were my main single entries today. Cashed every single one of those. Also was about a 1.7x day in my GPP exposure, so you can't complain about that. Also cashed out on one of our 2 pick'em slips. Did not cash out on the one that we talked about on stream, so that was unfortunate, but this one was 3.6x that we got, so that took us well into the positive. And then also cashed out on 2 of our 4 matchup bets, and one of them was a push, so only the 1 loss out of the 4. G-Dubs was one of them, the hometown favorite, and then also Austin Eckroat, past champion, went right back to the well against Bo Hostler and paid off for us. So congrats to everyone that tailed. Let's see if we can keep that momentum heading into tomorrow. And with the player pool being absolutely insane today, we've got a high mark to try and match that for tomorrow. But we'll do our best, see what we can do for Saturday. And that's going to be an early start. If you guys didn't see, it is threesomes off of both tees. So although we have had an AM wave edge for the first couple rounds, that's not going to be the case for tomorrow. It's only a 2.5-hour window of tee times, so there's just not going to be enough window or enough spread for that to happen. But in round 2, it was about a 1.1 shot difference, which was slightly lower than the difference that you had for Thursday, which was what we called for because the winds were going to be a little bit more of a factor in the morning. But with the gusts becoming a lot more of a problem in the afternoon, and I can tell you from being at the golf course that the gusts were a lot more significant in the afternoon than what they were calling for. That and the course drying out was why it was once again a pretty big difference. But that threesomes is going to take a lot of that away. And the reason for that, by the way, is not only some overnight rain, which is going to soften up the course, but also there's a chance for some rain in the afternoon. And because the forecasts are kind of all over the place, the HRRR, which we typically use, by the way, does not have them on here. But if you look at any of the local forecasts, like Weather App, that kind of stuff, you'll see that it's about a 50% chance of thunderstorms. So they're just trying to get out ahead of that, make sure that we don't have Saturday's round going into Sunday, which is annoying for me because I wanted to sleep in tomorrow morning. I've been waking up at 5 a.m. the last couple of days, which is not what I'm used to say the very least. But it's going to be another 5 a.m. wake-up call with the play starting at 7:25 a.m. But from the DFS perspective, I don't think there's that much to write home about, but I do think it's going to have a very big impact when we get to props later, because unlike the first couple of days where I targeted the PM wave for my fades, there's no PM wave to attack, and they're all going to get the easier AM side. It's going to be extremely soft if they get that thunderstorm tonight. And that thunderstorm has like a 70% chance to come through based on the models that we're seeing. It's calling for over 2 inches of rain. If that happens, scoring is going to drastically improve compared to the first couple rounds. And it would kind of shock me if they used lift clean in place. But if they get 2.5 inches, I guess that's a possibility depending on how the golf course handles that sort of weather. But if it's lift clean in place, then, I mean, it could play like 2.5 under par. So I think that the scoring average tomorrow has a lot of variance to it. It could be about even par. It could play close to -2.5 if they have that lift clean in place, which is going to complicate our lives when we go through the underdog and prize picks boards, but does mean that for showdown purposes that we're going to get some nuclear low rounds. Not quite maybe the 59 that we saw from Jake Knapp, but the -8 that you had in round number 1, the -4s, the -5s that were pretty prevalent, I think you're going to see even more of percentage-wise for tomorrow. And, you know, it's the cut line, so there's not as many players teeing it up. So raw number-wise, it might not be quite as many going that low, but percentage-wise, it's probably going to increase for moving day. And that's not even considering the moving day pin locations, which are typically a little bit easier than the rest of the week. You add that on top of it, and you can see why we want some nuclear low scores. So We're going to expand on maybe how that changes our strategy when we're actually building our player pool. And hint, hint, it means that we want to look for some high upside players, maybe a little bit more than usual, just because they think those low rounds are going to be out there. But for weather and tea time stacking, that's not going to be a big part of our process. But what is going to be a big part of our process would be taking a look at the ownership side, which for an 18-hole sample size of golf, when you're going to have the utmost variance out of any of these, you want to make sure that you're fading chalk where you can, because when you have guys that are 25 to 30% owned, it's very rare for players to be deserving of that sort of ownership number. And that's not to say, and this is the top 10, by the way, in the ownership that we have on the screen, that I'm fading everyone that you see on here. But unless I absolutely love the play, you're probably not going to see me on a lot of these guys. I prefer to take the players that are more differentiated, and to get back to the scoring conditions, I think it playing easier plays into the chasers. We want guys that can shoot something like -6, -7 if those rounds are going to be out there. And we need guys to actually be aggressive to shoot that kind of a score. And to make 7 or 8 birdies, which is probably what you need to get to the optimal lineup as well, you've got to be pin hunting. And your guys at the top, like a Smotherman, your other players rounding out the top 5, top 10, might not be as aggressive as they're protecting their leaderboard position, whereas the guys that just hardly made it through the cut line are going to be more freed up, and they're kind of going to act like Siwoo Kim. I mean, Siwoo does it regardless of the round, of the situation, whether he's playing from ahead or 10 strokes behind. He's going at every single flag stick. But the guys at even, -1, even -2, I'd say, maybe not so much with the -2s, but like especially the guys that are on that cut line or just 1, maybe 2 strokes in, are going to have that aggressive mindset. And they're also going to be a bit lower owned, because what you'll notice with the top 10 of the ownership here is that it's highly correlated to how people have been playing so far. And it's still going to also be correlated towards the top end of the board. People like spending their salary, so those guys are by default going to be a little bit higher owned. But you start to see the polarization happening where the guys that are playing well are a little bit higher owned than what they have been the last couple of days, whereas the guys that aren't playing as well, that just hardly squeaked through the cut line, aren't getting that same kind of esteem. So, for example, up top, Daniel Berger at -4 has had 2 solid rounds in a row. I've got him at 25.6%. It also partly comes down to the price tag, too. He's got an extremely soft price tag compared to some of the other studs, like a Gerard and a Lowry, that are over $10,500. So that's a slight negative, of course, when it comes to the opportunity cost of using those sort of players. But in general, the guys that are in that top 20 are the ones that you're going to see in this top 10 of the ownership. And Austin Smotherman, he is not in that top 10. That has a lot to do with the fact that he's a 7K range player, as opposed to the guys that are in the 9 and 10K range that we see on this list right here. Nico Echeverria, also at -7, playing well. He's the 1 to 8K range player that you're seeing in that top 10. But Smotherman is just outside the top 10. He's, I believe, around 13, 14% owned in my large field GPP projections. And comparatively, because he's down at the bottom end of the board, you've got players around him that are closer to 5% owned. He's 3 to even 4 times higher owned than some of those other options. So that's why that kind of chalk in the 7K range, and even more so in the 6K range, is stuff that you have to really be careful of, because those kind of players aren't usually the best in the field. That's why they're priced in the 6K range to begin with. So if you're going to have to use them in 25 to 35% of your lineups to get the leverage and close to that 2X mark that a lot of people are shooting for, and that's going to be a rather uncomfortable play. So that's why I still have a few of these guys in my lineups. And it's the players at the top end of the pricing that I am splurging on in a few cases when it comes to the game theory. But those are the best players that we have in the field. These aren't some slapdicks that are just hardly even getting into the field because the top players aren't teeing it up at the Cog. These are some legit guys that are even playing and getting into contention at major championships. So, for example, like a Lowry is that sort of a player, a Daniel Berger as well. And hint, hint, we're about to go through some shots gained metrics. Those are 2 players that I'm using despite the ownership at the top end of the board. So I give them as examples, not to say that you necessarily have to tail them yourselves and further boost up that ownership. In fact, I'd rather them be a little bit lower owned in an ideal scenario. But I pointed out to show you that even though we're having this talk about ownership, you don't have to fade every single player that you have up there. So if you guys want to see the rest of the projections, as I said, this is from my Patreon page in the Golf DFS tier. You guys can find a link to the Patreon page in the description of the video. On the Golf DFS tier, you guys can get access to everything that you're seeing here, completely uncensored. And that includes my entire 150 max pool, my projected fantasy points, Also, all the player pool tags for my lineups, giving the Y on every single player that I'm using. That includes the 2 shots gained categories at the top. That'd be ball striking and short game regression, high upside players, guys that have played well at PGA National, also good Bermuda grass putters that could perhaps, especially with some lower scoring. And I mentioned the extra importance for some of these nuclear low rounds. That's why we're leaning into high upside players and the Bermuda putters a little bit more than I have been the last couple days. So that's really the main strategy change. That and then also not taking the AM lean. There's just no waves to speak of. So you'd be galaxy braining it far too much if you're playing anything from the tee time perspective. I think it's more of a slate to just get back to the basics, to play some game theory, try and jam in at least 2 to 3 low-owned players in your large GPP lineups. Also, build a solid player pool. Don't have junk players in there that you're just using for no rhyme and reason. Be very intentional about every single player that you're clicking into your exposure. It's going to help your long-term results, even if it's just a very small edge that you're generating. If you get better at it and you make that small edge a little bit more sizable, it's going to add up over the long run when you play enough showdown slates and you get that kind of sample size under your belt. So that's what we have with the player pool tags. And again, like I said, every single player that I'm using as a 150 max player, I think it's 28 guys that I have in my player pool for tomorrow. It's either 28 or 29. I believe 28 is what I had on my last count. Every single one of them has one of these tags down for it so that, again, I can clean up my process, also convey to my members why I'm using all the people that I am. And if that sounds like something up your alley, you don't want to just have to guess why your touts are on the players that you are. Make sure to check out the page if you haven't already. But next up, we're going to go through some shots gained metrics. So if there's any players that you guys want me to deep dive, now is the time for that. We're going to go through ball striking poppers first, and then also some short game regression candidates. And then we're going to open it up to anything that you guys have in the live chat. So let's say hi to anyone that's still funneling in here, and then we'll get to some of those deep dives after we tap off the shots gained section. You had Anthony in the chat as well. Bobby Bombs, welcome on in. Jose saying the Patreon boys stay paid. Yeah, amen to that, man. Especially today. Round 1 was a little average, but today was the kind of spike round that we were hoping for. So I appreciate that too, Alan. Welcome on in, my dude. We got Jay in the chat as well. And do I think that Smotherman holds on? History would say that he doesn't. Yeah, I think of the last 12 times someone's had the 36-hole lead, only 3 players have actually won it. And the last one to do it was a very long time ago, and that was Keith Mitchell. So, recent sample would say that he's going to have a tough time doing it, but having a 3-4 shot lead is exactly where he wants to be. We got Antonio down there as well. Let's you got Brian there as well. Welcome on in, my dude. Any thoughts about Matt Wallace? He took him for a top 20. We'll do the deep dive here in a second, but hopefully it's been a good week for you. Yeah, no morning wave tomorrow, but welcome on in, Eagle. We got Antonio also. If the Thunder don't get you, I think is what your name is. Welcome on in as well. And yeah, like I said, any questions, just feel free to let me know. And we're going to do that here in just a moment. I need to wet the beak a little bit. My throat was getting a little dry there. Let's start off with the ball striking metrics. And ball striking, if you're newer to golf, just to kind of simplify that for you guys, is just shots gained off the tee plus shots gained approach. And the reason why shots gained ball striking is something that you're going to hear me harp on all the time, but also other touts. It's probably their main talking point when it comes to these round by round analysis, is because this is the most consistent part of golf. Off the tee and approach is your golf swing, how you're actually striking the golf ball. Both are correlated with each other. When you hit the ball well off the tee, it lets you set yourself up on approach at the same time. And these players can oftentimes sustain that kind of play from event to event, even month to month on the PGA Tour. And when we see guys going on runs, it's not always just the ball striking that's carrying them, but the vast majority of the time, it's them going on a ball striking run. It's not them gaining putting for like 5 straight events and then being like plus 10 strokes into the positive. Has that happened before? Yes, it has. There have been a few guys that have gone on very small stretches like that, but the other way around, where guys have gone on hot runs with how they're hitting the ball, infinitely outnumbers the guys that have done it with the short game. So that's why we are so, engrossed with these kind of categories. And I'd say between the off the tee and approach play, the approach play is what's even more important. That's as a second shot golf course. I would say after the rain that they're getting tonight too, that they're going to be even more receptive, and guys that can land the ball near the hole and get it to stop. I mean, it's going to be very soft. It's going to be spinning and pretty much stopping exactly where it lands, are going to have a bunch of 5 to 10 footers for birdie tomorrow. And obviously the putter has to somewhat cooperate to get to the optimal lineup. but you're not going to have a good chance of shooting -7, -8 unless you're hitting the approach shots to set it up from that perspective. So, for example, Azicheng Dao was #1 in the field with his ball striking and then lost 2 strokes putting. So he had an okay day, but frankly, it could have been a little bit better than that if he'd even just been a neutral with those 2 categories, which we're going to expand on here in just a moment. We don't just look at the off the tee and approach play and then completely ignore the short game stats. But what we'll say about the short game stats, because we're going to deep dive these here in just a few moments, is that because they're a little bit more volatile, you give some grace to players that lost strokes around the green and putting. So, for example, on a Dow who was so good off the tee and on approach, I don't worry about him losing the nearly 2.5 strokes in those 2 categories. He's somebody that I expect to be a little bit better there. And if so, somebody that could set up well for moving day, and especially because he's a 6K range player. It's hard to sometimes want to use guys at the very bottom end of the board. And this kind of stat profile gives us a clear reason to maybe throw him into a few lineups. And I'm not saying that I'm using Dow in like 20% or anything like that, but 5-7% is going to be my target for my large 150 max exposure. And he's not the kind of guy I'd be willing to use in single entries or cash. I guess just to be transparent about it and kind of give you guys a peek behind the curtain into my process. This is much more of like a large field play where I'm playing against a bunch of entries. I know that he'll be sub 5% owned, hopefully sub 3-4% owned. Hopefully me mentioning here doesn't get him over that 5% mark. But either way, the same, if not lower ownership compared to a lot of the other guys around him. And also is going to help you save quite a bit of salary. So that's why, those are the kind of guys that'll take shots on down low, not necessarily just like, picking names out of a hat. I feel like that's a lot of people's process for Showdown, and he could do a whole lot better than that. Also, we had Ryan Gerard really play well. He gained 5 strokes ball striking, so quite the bounce back after shooting +2 in round 1. He lost around the green and then just was a slight positive with the putter. So like a Dow, this is a 9, maybe even a 10 out of 10 stat profile. A Chandler Phillips gained 4.2 strokes ball striking and then lost a little bit over a stroke between the short game categories. We'll give him an 8.5, a 9 out of 10 with the shots gained profile there. A Joel Damon, the same thing, another 8.5, a 9 there. Gained 3.7 between the off the tee and approach play, and then was about a -1 loser between the around the green and putting. And AJ Ewert and a Mackenzie Hughes, though, are players that had some of the best rounds of the day today, and you can see why they were able to do that. They didn't just ball strike it like some of these other top tier players, but Ewert gained almost 4 strokes on the greens, and then Mackenzie Hughes, who's a madman, usually a really good putter, has sucked to start 2026. So this was the kind of positive regression that we knew was going to be coming around for Mackenzie at some point. He gained 2.6 strokes into the positive, though. So it's not to say that these guys can't do it in back-to-back rounds. For an example of that, look at Smotherman. Smotherman gained off for round 1 around the green and putting, and then also was able to do so today. But those are rare. Those kind of performances, by the way, are why Smotherman is winning by 3 shots. It's very rare. You don't always see that. One guy a week, maybe once a month, is able to go out there and do that sort of a thing, which is why guys like a Ewert and Mackenzie Hughes, though they hit the ball well, aren't so much the guys that I like targeting in my round 3 showdown process, because I'd expect these guys to come back down to earth a bit. And I'm a large 150 max player. I'm trying to take down contests with 1,000 to 15,000 entries on a day like tomorrow. I'm not going to do it by having good plays. I'm going to have to do it by having the absolute nuts at 4 or 5 spots, which is why I'd prefer some of these guys that could maybe flip it 2 to 3 strokes into the positive. And guys like a Smalley, Sudarshan, Yellow Miraju, yeah, not to clown on Sudarshan too much, but he's becoming one of my least favorite players on tour. It has nothing to do with his golf, like how he's played. Like his results have been great this year. It's just that he reminds me of Brian Harman way too much in all the negative ways, taking forever over the ball, walking off of the ball because he hears a slight sound in his backswing or, from somebody like a hole over or something like that. The guy just needs to get out of his head. But today he gained 3 strokes ball striking and then he lost around the green in the putting. So you know what I'm doing? Even though he annoys me, and he's lefty too, by the way, and he's short. So it's not just the fact that he's slow. He's got a lot of the Brian Harman stuff going on, and Brian Harman's not my favorite player. As a lot of guys probably will know that I've watched here for quite some time. But am I using them tomorrow? Heck yeah, I'm using them, right? I'd be crazy to pass up somebody just because they annoy me on the golf course when they set up this well stat-wise. So I'll be using him. And Alex Smalley would be that same sort of player that'd be a short game regression candidate. Because as you can see, gained 3 strokes ball striking, but then lost almost 2.5 strokes putting. If he's even just a neutral in that category tomorrow, could be quite the bounce back there. So it's point out a few other notable stat profiles here. I mean, we don't need to just read every name. You can obviously see a lot of those on the very left side, but Max Homa hit the ball well, somebody that I'm planning on using myself. Michael Brennan hit the ball well round 1, also did for round 2, but lost 2.5 strokes putting. So he's another one of those stat profiles where we're getting that ball striking and some perhaps a little bit of short game regression too. And those are my favorite plays on the slate, where you're not just getting the one side, but you're getting both aspects and both trends boosting that play. Because even if one of the two doesn't end up getting there, they could still be a half decent play. And just to go through some of the short game stuff, we take a look at the guys that gained a whole bunch putting. It's not something that is very repeatable in back-to-back days. And let's do Brooks Koepka as the case study here. I know a lot of people have been, slandering his name, saying that Brooks Koepka can't putt. I've seen it on Twitter. I've seen people saying that he's broken, that he's never going to be able to gain strokes putting ever again. Oh, what did he do today? He gained 4 strokes putting. He was one of the best players in the field when it came to making putts. What did he do the day before? He was one of the worst players putting. He lost over 2 strokes. He also lost 2 strokes around the green. Now, what does the stat profile look like? It looks a whole lot like Sudarshan's stat profile, right? Gaining, in fact, Sudarshan was even better with the approach play and the off the tee play, and then lost like 4 strokes between those 2 categories. Maybe Sudarshan can pull a Brooks Koepka, shoot -6, break the slate open, was what carried a lot of my exposure into the positive today. These sort of guys, though, that gained like 3 or 4 strokes putting, not as hot on heading into the very next round. So, it's not to say that all these guys are unplayable. Just to remind ourselves, only 2 of those 5 player pool tags were even dealing with the round 2 stats. I mean, that was the short game regression, the ball striking, as we've mentioned, but there's high upside players, of course, history, also the Bermuda putters that I'm using at this golf tournament that could still get you onto some of these players in reality. So it's not to say that like they're not usable, but definitely a downtick, at least when you're looking at the shots gained perspective. Whereas if you take a look at the guys that lost a whole bunch of strokes putting, if they made the cut and they were at least half decent ball striking, then they're guys that we could see a little bit of a bounce back from. And it doesn't happen in every single case. Brooks Koepka, obviously an example of one that worked out for us today, but another one that didn't work out for us was Nikolai Højgaard. I think he was a little bit of a better putter today, but it wasn't like drastic compared to round number 1. In fact, he still lost. Well, actually, it was kind of drastic. He went from losing a whole bunch of strokes putting, 3.2 in round 1, to about a neutral. So I guess what I mean to say is that all short game regression candidates aren't built the same, right? Some of them go from losing to gaining 3 strokes or 4 strokes, like in the case of Brooks Koepka. Some of them will go from losing the 3 strokes to just even being about a neutral. But that was quite the improvement, right? If we take a look at his scores from round to round, Højgaard only made 2 birdies in the first round. Today, though he had some extra bogeys, he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 birdies, which of course led to a much better round 2 showdown performance. So I think that's why we want to look at these stats and why some of these players that were into the negative, but were okay ball striking, are guys that you might want to give a little bit of extra attention to. So for example, Dan Brown, Ali Hodges were both into the positive ball striking, but lost with the putter. Also a Michael Brennan, a Nico Echeverria. Hoffman missed the cut, but he also would have been one of those players if he had made it to moving day. But these guys here, and Alex Smalley, we've already pointed out, Sudarshan, heck, even a Daniel Berger, a Perry, Meissner, if he had made the cut, would have been somebody that we could have thrown into this category. All players that were solid with the 2 most important categories, but struggled in the ones that we'd expect to be the most volatile. So you're going to see me on a lot of those players, and especially the ones that aren't towards the top end of the board. For example, like your Dan Brown, your Hodges, shoe-ins to my player pool. Like if they're not going to be low-owned, averagely owned, and check the boxes I'm looking for, you bet my ass I'm going to be using them in some lineups. Alex Smalley, we already mentioned the Sudarshan play. But like a Perry, also at that T38 spot and not overly chalky, are the guys that I'm really narrowing down on for my round 3 process. But those are the shots gained metrics. Let's go through some of your deep dives that you guys have in the chat. Just to remind you guys, if you guys want to download the sheet from before with my entire player pool, all my projections, make sure to check out the Patreon page for that. And on there, it has all the research tools that you need for the slate. It's got the Bermuda grass putting stats for everyone in the field. By the way, it's not just how they putt on Bermuda, but also that compared to their baseline. So you can see whether it's a surface that is better or worse for their game compared to how they've been playing recently. We also have the course history tab at the bottom. That'd be right here. It shows you how they played at PGA National. That helps you find a lot of those plays towards the rights that we have with the CH next to it. The Bermuda putting, of course, is what can be found right there. But if we go back to Bet the Number, which is just another tool that I love using and I use for every single slate, if you go to the top, you click round props, and I've showed this off a few times, so we're going to do this rather quickly. But if you scroll down to the bottom, they've got birdie or better percentage on here. So if you've been wondering how to take a look at recent form for birdies, this is exactly how you do it. And I know a lot of people will say, oh, look at the season-long stats, right? Well, first off, it's too early to do that in 2026. But if you're looking at 2025, it's an entire season worth of data. On here, it's preloading the last 24 rounds. And you can see who's making the most birdies over, something that's at least been within the last couple months. So that's a way that you can find some of those high upside guys. And for example, Garrett Higo is one of the high upside guys that I'm using for tomorrow because he ranks number 2 on that list. So just, I guess, another play that I'll throw out there that would have been behind the paywall. I highly recommend checking out Bet the Number if you guys haven't already. A great resource for doing a lot of the research and building your own player pool. And best part is, if you guys haven't already signed up over there, you can try it out completely for free. If you guys use the link in the description or code Gsluke when you're signing up, it'll give you access to a free trial to try all the tools for a week to see whether you like it or not. And obviously, if you do, you can subscribe and take advantage of all the tools that they have to offer. If not, then you can cancel and there's no cost to you. Obviously, that trial was just your, chance to see what they have to offer. But I love what they have over there. It's my go-to. It's the only database that I really use on a consistent basis at this point. And from the PGA Tour side, they've got everything that you could possibly want to offer over there. So I can't say enough good things about Bet the Number. But with that being said, let's now catch up on any questions that you've got in chat. But if you're here for the prop and the betting side, we are going to go through that here in just a few moments. Going to try and get through the questions as fast as possible as, I've got the 5 a.m. wake up time. So we're going to try and end this by 9. We still have another half an hour, so we got plenty of time. But I know sometimes the question sections can be quite long on here, but just know that we will be getting to prop and bets quite soon on here. We're going to go through the averages, pin locations. We already have those posted on X/Twitter. We're going to see how they compare to the first couple rounds. And then underdog, prize picks. We'll see what we have from that perspective as well. And then if we have time, I think we will, especially if we can get through these questions in a timely manner. We're going to do some matchup stuff as well on Draftkings. So stay tuned for all of that. But as promised, we're going to get through these questions as fast as I can. Not to say that we're going to do them, in a rushed fashion. I'm just going to try and be as concise as I possibly can on these. So let's see where we left off. We already answered this Smotherman one, but let's go through some Matt Wallace thoughts. I know I've read your comment before, but I wasn't able to give you the feedback I was hoping for. It was a bit short game dependent. He did gain nearly 3 strokes around the green plus putting, but he did gain ball striking. He didn't do anything crazy there, only about 0.4 strokes in the positive between his off the tee and approach play. I'm going to give him, I was going to say a 6 out of 10, but maybe a 5, just because the short game is a bit of a red flag, especially that around the green, the 1.7 strokes there is not something that he's going to be able to do for all 4 days in a row. But Matt Wallace, I'll still give him a 5 out of 10. Like, I'm not going to say that he's a below average play. He's just probably about 50-50 for this sort of a field at this stage. And you said you took him for the top 20. Let's see where he's at this point, because I know obviously that really bears into that sort of a bet. He's starting at T38, which I think is only one, at most 2 shots off of the top 20. Yeah, it's 2 shots off of T18. He could pull it off for you. And for your sake, man, I hope he does for you. Let's see what's going on. He says, how was my day at the course and on the betting side? Betting side, amazing. On the course, even better. I love being at these events. It's like I'm in heaven. Literally, I walk around. Every group is just a smile on my face. There's at least one player at every group that I love watching, some more than others. I'll admit that, but it's a blast out there. The highlight of the day, though, was David Ford saving par on the last hole and making it to the weekend for us. He maybe could have made a bogey and made the weekend. That would have been pretty close. Obviously, he ended up needing the par because of how it shook out towards the end. But he was in the swamp. That's the only way I can really put it. But he was like 5 yards into the swamp. Luckily, the water levels at PGA National this week are a lot lower than normal. So we've seen a lot of players hitting out of the mud this week. That's the reason for that, by the way. That's not always the case. If it was a rainy month, they would be a lot higher and they wouldn't be able to hit the ball out of a lot of those spots. But he hit the ball to like 20 feet on the green. It was just off the front edge, 2 putt to make a par and get out of there. That was a blast. And it took him like 10 minutes to make that decision. I don't know if they showed the whole debacle on the broadcast or not. They didn't have that up in the chalet that I was in, but it was I don't know, it was driving me nuts because I had in a whole bunch of lineups. You guys know I was big on David Ford this week. So him making the cut was big for our weekend prospects. Let's see. Was wondering how I look at rounds 1 and 2 for shots gained. For instance, do I weigh them equally or more to round 2? I personally only look at the round 2 stats. I'm not a big round 1 guy for my round 3 showdown process. Where I start to look at the past rounds is mostly for my round 4 showdown process. And I don't do it with everyone for round 4. I usually only do it with my conviction plays towards the top. So I'm more so looking to ride the hot hand, their trajectory for round number 2. I don't think you have to ignore round 1. Like, that's a data point that I think you could add on top of the round 2 stuff. But if you're going to do that, just know that the round 2 stuff is, at least in my opinion, and I'd say most people's opinion, a little bit more important than the stuff from round 1. Can we deep dive Billy Ho? He's been having the worst of the weather and then not doing the worst. Yeah, the bear trap's only where he's, kind of played sketchy golf, and especially the chip into the water today. I did not see that one in person, but I was able to see the highlight after the fact. He hit the ball okay. Not great. I mean, but still about an average player between the off the tee and approach play. But average in a PGA Tour field is far from being completely lost. It was the around the green, that one shot alone was a big reason why he's a dark red there. Yeah, he could turn it around. And yeah, he didn't really have a set of soft conditions the first couple days. He's going to get that tomorrow. And if he can throw some darts, get that putter working on Bermuda grass, he is one of the best putters on that type of grass in the world. And he could have a low round in him. So I'll definitely be rooting him on. And depending on his lines on the sports books, maybe even could be a good take for the over on birdies. And by the way, I think overs on birdies is probably the safest way to attack these prop boards when we look at that here in a few moments. What a day by AJ Ewert. Amen to that. Somebody in the chat last night was planning on playing Ewert, and I told them to stick to it. So I hope they did, because that was the nutted performance of the day. Can I deep dive Pavon? Yeah, I got you. I haven't seen him once this week. So he's in the field, and he's T27, just sneakily getting past me, I guess, across PGA National. He was short game dependent, though. He did gain about 2.5 strokes between the around the green and the putting. The ball striking was slightly negative, and he did lose in the one category that's the most important, and that would be your approach play. So I'm going to give him a 4 out of 10, which might feel a little unfair because he had an above average round, but he did it in pretty much the exact opposite fashion of what I would have hoped to see there. So he's a 6K range guy. So like there could be another reason for you using him that makes him playable, but for me, not towards the top end of my process. Denny Berger versus Brennan. So 2 similar stat profiles. So we'll bring them up so I can show that again, but both of them gaining ball striking and then losing with the putter. So you can see Daniel Berger right there. Michael Brennan, same exact story. Gaining ball striking, losing 2.5 strokes with the putter. If it's a 50-50 and salary is not involved and no ownership, then obviously give me Daniel Berger. Like, no doubt about it. But they're different prices. They're at different ownership points. So that's not the case. So you'll have to let me know if maybe there's some odds involved with that or maybe some salary like for DFS. But both of them make quite a bit of sense, I would say. He said, Brooks, if he putts similarly, watch out. Yeah, and I liked his presser this afternoon. He said he's not here just to make cuts because that's what he was asked about when he first sat down. He's there to win. And he didn't say that, but obviously implied it with his words. I like a steely Brooks Koepka, one that has a bit of a chip on his shoulder. And it feels like he's putting that chip on his shoulder himself. It's not really the other people putting that pressure on him, but he's always been that way, right? He kind of likes to stir up drama himself, a la Ben Roethlisberger. I mean, I'm a Steeler fan, so I got to see that his entire career as a Steeler fan. Guy would just make up injuries, end up playing on Sunday, look totally fine, and then ball out. I think he just needs that chip on his shoulder to ball out sometimes, and it looks like he's doing that. Deep dive Homa, I gotcha. So Max Homa, also decent ball striking day, mostly with the approach play, which is the most important of the 4 categories. He did gain over 2 strokes around the green in putting, but it was only about a stroke in both categories. So it's not like he spiked too heavily into either of the 2 categories where it feels completely unsustainable. I'm going to give him a 6.5 out of 10. We're not going to give him the 7.5 to 8.5 out of 10 like we've seen on some of the other stat profiles just because of that short game, but still better than most. ADDC, he said he shot -10 and back-to-back on very specific metrics. You're saying pars, 71s that are 7,100 yards. Yeah, I don't know if there's anything to that. Maybe there is. And hey, if that's your narrative, you can go with it. But completely different golf course, I'd imagine, right? So I don't know if there's any correlation to this week. He said, you've been contemplating it this season, always worrisome of paying for picks, but it seems like the Patreon pays for itself. You're about to purchase a membership thanks to Luke for all that you do. And yeah, I get that. There's a lot of scammers, people in this industry that aren't as transparent as what we have around here. But yeah, I think if you've been around the live streams enough, you've seen the chat, I think it speaks for itself, right? I don't really have to ask for testimonials or anything like that from the chat. They do it for me. And it has a lot to do with the kind of success that we've had. So glad to have you on board, man. And let me know if you have any questions. I appreciate that. Nice goal. Welcome on in. What would I say my thoughts are on Homa's profile? So I just kind of gave that, but I would say solid, especially because the approach play was so much into the positive. And with the dartboards for greens, I think that's going to be even more important. How is the green regulation percentage calculated? Well, you can do it a couple of different ways. PGA Tour website, you can just screen scrape the data like I do and get that sort of a stuff. But there's also databases, like for example, like Bet the Number right here, that also track a lot of that data. So you can see it over there, and they've got the live stuff. You can click on like round 1, round 2, all that sort of jazz. That's where you can find that. And other databases have that as well. It's not just Bet the Number, plenty of them in the industry. Zitching Dow AMT time with what looks like a good profile. Yeah, we mentioned him earlier, so he may have joined us just after that. But yes, I co-sign that. Probably even a 9.5 out of 10 stat profile. One of the better ones that we've had for a while. He said Lowry sprinkle for an outright at plus 1,100. Plus 1,100 feels reasonable. I know he's starting really far back, but if Smotherman spins his wheels, he's right there. But only just a couple shots back off of second place. I don't know if the plus 1,100 is enough because Smo Daddy's got to come way back to the field to get some of these guys into it. But somebody asked the question before, like, is Smother Me in money? I have a whole bunch of nicknames for Austin. He's one of my favorite players that we've had on tour for a while. I hate that he's killing me on the outrights this week because I didn't bet him this week. So I hope maybe he finishes in second and one of my guys can slightly catch up to him. But yeah, Lowry would be one of the guys I have on my short list. He's obviously got the course history and he's playing well. He said Kiefer is dookie. Yeah, I don't disagree with you on that this week. But in general, man, hell no. He's an absolute stud. He was the #1 guy on the Korn Ferry Tour, somebody that I think is going to be Rookie of the Year. He had a top 10 finish at the RSM Classic. He's far from dookie. And I understand what you're saying, obviously, just complaining because I guess he may have tanked a couple of your lineups, but I don't know if you should be tarnishing the names of these players. And here's the reason I say that. I believe in karma, right? And if you talk shit about a golfer, he's probably going to play shit for you every time you use him in the future. I mean, that's just only right? If you're talking shit about the guy, it's like if you talk shit about me, right? And then you try to tail my picks, you deserve to lose all the picks that you tail, right? And only the ones that you tail. I hope everyone else is able to hit on the picks that they tail that end up entering. But that's just how the world works. The energy you put out there is the energy that you're going to receive back. So you won't see me ever really saying that about players unless it's like a single shot. Like I'll climb them for a bad shot, but then I'll also usually remind my friends and family, did that a couple times today, that they hit a lot more good shots than bad shots. That's for sure. He said, if anyone who comes from behind for the win, I wish I had the crystal ball to tell you. I'd say that Shane Lowry, I know we had the question about him, is probably my favorite out of all of them. I think Nico's got a chance. His stat profile today was half decent, even though he didn't have the best raw score. The ball striking above average and then also lost putting. He's usually a really good putter, so that was especially kind of surprising. So I'd say Nico, Shane Lowry, a couple guys I was really high on this week. I also bet Aaron Rye. He's up there in the mix, so I'll throw him out there. I obviously think that my outright bets can make a little bit of a charge too. And yeah, maybe Daniel Berger too. We mentioned him as one of our core plays this week. Yeah, you can see how it's been a very good week for us so far, obviously. A lot of our guys, a lot of our outrights, core plays are in the top 15 at this stage. Probably one of those 4 or 5 players. Not to say that like one of the new guys couldn't do it, but I'd put a lot more of my money on some of the studs up top to do so. He said he never thought that there was weather coming in overnight. So the course will probably play the same. I don't think so. I think it's going to play easier. So I'll give you some extra thoughts on that. But there is weather coming in overnight. We talked about that earlier. I don't know what would have made you say otherwise. Maybe I made a comment that made you think that, but no, we knew that there's weather coming in overnight. It's about 2 inches of rain, and there could even be some rain tomorrow afternoon. That's why they moved up the tee times and made it threesomes off of both sides. So yeah, you're probably just confused and joined us late. But yeah, we know that, and we've talked about that a few times already. Probably not happening, but will, or you said you're not asking, you said, but you hope Keith finishes in the top 20. Me too. That'd be good for some DFS lineups, so cheers to that. He said, is Sudarshan a good play for Showdown? So yeah, based on some of your questions, you need to go back and listen to the first half of the live stream. I'm not going to do the full deep dive again, but yes, he's got a great stat profile and is about an 8.5 out of 10. But I gave a lot of thoughts earlier, so if you scroll back, you can get the full deep dive then. You got a Smotherman first round leader at 100 to 1, $5 to 505. Yeah, I know a lot of people that had him for first round leader, so congrats to you. You didn't do the outright on him though. Yeah, those are a little frustrating, huh? That's why I actually bet Nico for first round leader. I took him for an outright, and I told myself, you know, some of these AM guys, if they go off the very first morning and I don't have them for a first round leader, I'd be kicking myself. So I took him. Keith Mitchell didn't really come close to the first round leader. He was close for a little bit at some stage that morning. But yeah, I don't know. Sometimes you might want to bet those guys outright. It's crazy how that works out sometimes. He said Damon looks good. Yeah, he looked good for today as well. And I didn't only play AM guys. I did have a few PM guys in my player pool. And we had the absolute nuts from the PM wave. We had Shane Lowry. We had Joel Gaiman who went off with the harder side of the conditions. So even then, we were still just running like the sun today. There was nothing that's stopping us. Yeah, gained ball striking, lost a little bit with the short game. I'm going to give that an 8.5 out of 10. He's, not gaining the 5 strokes ball striking as some of the other players, but he's up there for sure. Yeah, putting the good karma out there is always a good thing. He said, thoughts on Joel? So yeah, I just gave some thoughts there. 8.5 out of 10. He's pretty close to the top end of the board, as I'd say, for Showdown plays. Let's go through the prep and the betting side now. So I know we just had a question about it, so this is a good segue into conditions for tomorrow. There's going to be a lot of overnight rain. This course is going to be significantly softer. The only thing I haven't seen yet, which we're going to go through here now together so that we can get an idea for conditions, is pin locations. If it's a moving day setup and it's slightly easier pins than the first couple rounds, then all of these averages will improve. The fairway average is going to go up because you're not going to see as much rollout in the fairways. The green average is going to go up because balls are going to spin and they're not going to ricochet off the green like I saw a whole bunch today. So that probably goes up to like 12.5 per round. Fairway average probably goes up to 8, maybe even like 8.5 per round. Now, the categories that we don't really know about are because of the pin locations, because the pins, if they're hard, it's still going to get easier compared to rounds 1 and 2, but maybe not as easy as what it could be if it's a true moving day setup. Because if it's a moving day setup, very little wind, like you can see, especially because they're going off at 7 a.m. You got to remember that, right? They're not teeing off in the afternoon when it's going to be a little bit drier and a little bit windier. It's going to be almost pristine conditions for the first 4 hours tomorrow. That's soft greens, also a moving day setup. Could have this playing in the -1 to -2.5 range. Birdie average could be in the 4 to 4.5 range. Bogey or worse average could drop to like 2 bogeys or worse per round, which is obviously a lot different than what we had for Thursday and Friday. So that's why I wanted to hold off on these pin locations, because that's going to help us narrow down that range. That's obviously quite a wide range of outcomes, but that's how important those pin locations can be. So, and by the way, just to throw out the TP World Tour stats, you guys can see those at the very bottom too. Played a little bit over par. So not as over par as round 1. Round 1 was absolutely brutal, but I'll also show you guys just real quickly, the weather forecast for the DP World Tour. It is going to be windy for round number 3. So unlike last night where it played only plus 0.42, it's probably going to play at least +1 for round number 3 on that side. But we're going to focus on the Cognizant first, as that is, of course, the main golf tournament that we're breaking down here. Let's look at these pins. So hole number 1 is on the front left corner. It's only 3 paces from the left, so that is kind of tricky. If you short side yourself in that bunker, good luck on trying to make a par. It's probably not going to happen. But a front pin location on a short, it's only a 350-something yard hole, means that you're hitting a wedge, and with all that room behind it, I would imagine that most players are going to try and hit a draw about where my cursor is right now, and then draw it back with a little bit of left spin back to that pin location. It'd be tailor-made for me. That's my stock ball flight, is a baby draw with a whole bunch of spin. So yeah, maybe your right-handed draw players are just going to eat this up, but even your fade guys, maybe you don't have to be as aggressive to that pin. You hit your fade, you hit it 5 to 10 feet right of that pin, and then you spin it back close to it. I think you're going to see an increase in birdies and a better scoring average at hole number 1. Let's go to hole 2 next. 2 is in the front right corner. Compared to today's pin, it's a bit harder. The reason for that is that now, rather than being on the low spot, it's up on this high spot on the right. So if you do miss in this bunker, it's going to be pretty hard to judge the distance and get up and down. And then if you hit a really long iron shot, let's say down where my cursor is here, you can see how you only have so much room to work with before the ball is just going to work way away from the hole and then become a very hard putt to get down for par. So yeah, it's maybe going to be a bit harder from the bogey perspective on this hole, but because it's softer conditions and lower winds, the scoring average is going to get easier. Like that's, even though it is a slightly harder pin location, we do have to keep that in mind. Let's go to hole 3 next. 3 is in the very middle right of the screen. I would say that it's the second easiest pin that we get at this hole. The easiest is about where the 2 is right now, which maybe they use on Sunday. I've seen them do that a few times over the years. But this middle right is towards the fat side of the green. You do have this little bit of slope here, which can be a little tricky if, let's say, you hit it over the very back left. But most people are going to hit it in this bunker, maybe on the green, and then try and 2-putt for a birdie from there. I'd expect the scoring average, though, to be a bit easier than what it was in this back left corner, because in the back left corner, you have to carry this bunker, the 2-putt from the very front, like a Smotherman had. You can see he had 8 feet for birdie. He was able to convert, but a lot of people weren't able to. It's an easier 2-putt towards this side of the green, and the chips are also a little bit more straightforward, I would say. Again, with the exception of going over the back left, which I don't think very many players will do tomorrow. Hole 4 is in the very middle of the screen, so this is the easiest pin that you have at this hole. It's really close to where the 2 is, actually, from this overhead view. The big no-go is to go long right and into this low area, and because it's soft, people are going to have to kind of take that on a bit, because if you're going to spin it back, even this little bit of a slope to the very long left is also going to come into play. So I think the average on this hole is going to get easier. A lot of that's going to have to do with the wind and the softer golf course. But this pin location, I'm not so sure it's as easy as I thought it was when I first saw it. Like it's got a little bit of trickiness to it because of the sloping that you have on that green. Let's go to 5 next. 5 is in the very back middle. So it's a center pin location, which is normally good for scoring and especially for getting up and down and making pars. But it's going to be a long shot towards that back corner. So I would say a bit easier than rounds 1 and 2 because it's a bit further away from the water. But it's not like you're going to see a whole lot of birdies at that hole. It's not an easy pin. It's just maybe not as difficult as the first couple days. Let's go to 6 next. 6 is a middle right pin. It's up on the high spot. So this is a tough pin. It was on the high spot for round number 1 as well. So not quite as far back as Thursday, but it's still got all that slope just to the left of it, which complicates things. And you're going to see a lot of free putts at that hole because of that. Let's go to 7, the long par 3. It's a front left pin. It's the customary location for moving day, and it's much easier than today, but it's very similar to the first day where it was on the front right corner. So yeah, easier than round number 2, but about the same as what you had for the first day. Let's go to 8 next. 8 is a front left pin location. This is going to be a birdie fest. This is probably the easiest pin at this hole. You're going to have enough room to spin it back. And because there's a good amount of slope from back to front, you're going to see guys ripping it back. And I think the hardest part is almost going to be judging the spin and figuring out how far to land it to get it to end up next to the hole. Let's go to 9 next. 9 is going to be a middle right pin. It's significantly easier than today. It's on the low area, also a shorter shot in. So that's kind of enough said there. I think the scoring average will improve by at least like 0.1, maybe even like 0.2 shots on that hole. Also incorporating the conditions. 10 is a middle right pin. So about where my cursor is now. I would say that compared to today, it's a bit harder, but compared to round 1, it's about the same. Round 1, it was on this front right corner, and it's a little bit further into the green for round 3, which makes it a bit of a harder chip, but still, at least if you're going forward in 2, you're going to have a lot of room to potentially make an eagle there now. Let's go to 11. And by the way, that's kind of like a quintessential moving day pin. They want to give players a chance to make big moves up the boards. And sometimes that happens via making eagles. So I think at 10 is probably going to be the best chance I've seen so far for players to do that. Yeah, hole 3, it's probably too long to see a whole lot of eagles there, especially if it's going to be the same wind direction, which, speaking of, it's an opposite wind direction. So actually, now that I think about it, hole 3 playing downwind, it kind of changes the complexion of that hole. I think you could even see some eagles there because you're going to be hitting an iron into that location, and there is just enough room to get an iron in there. but not enough room to get a 3-wood. So that's, I guess, a little bit of revision on hole 3, just because we kind of know that direction now. Let's go to 11 next. 11 is going to be a front left pin. And let's see, is it on top or below that slope? It's going to be on top of the slope, which makes it a bit harder. So this is a tricky one, especially with the soft conditions. It's going to be tough to get it up there and then hold it, because if you're hitting a wedge in, especially if you hit a driver off that tee, you're going to have the propensity to spin it down that slope into this bottom portion. So if I was playing 11, obviously I'm not a professional golfer, but if I was in the ear of anyone for tomorrow and maybe their caddy, I would tell them to lay up off of 11. Maybe you're somebody that's in the field watching this and, lurking in the chat. There's been a couple of players, Echeverria, in fact, one of them, that has done that a couple of times before. So, hey, if you're watching this, Nico, especially because you're not the most accurate driver, I think we'd both admit that, hit something less than driver here. Put it in the fairway. Give yourself a better chance not to spin the ball back on the green, because it's soft. It's going to be an easy pin. It's further away from the water. You can be aggressive to it, but you don't want to be aggressive with a wedge just because of that sloping that's there. So, hey, again, I'm some slapdick non-professional, but that's my take on 11. I think that's the way to attack it, especially if you can get the ball in the fairway. 12 is in the very back right corner. It is the biggest portion of the green, but it's a bit of a longer shot in. So I'd say pin location-wise, maybe a bit trickier than what we had for today. Let's go to 13 next. So 13 is the start of a pretty tough stretch. 13 is not the toughest hole, but 14 through 17 is the real meat and potatoes of this golf course. 13 is the front left pin location, though. It's a short shot in, and in fact, I don't think they've made this drivable very often, but there have been a couple rounds for moving day that they've moved up the tee box at 13. It made it closer to like 325 yards. And when they do that, some of the bombers will try and get it up near the green. Not sure if they're going to do that, but this is the pin location that they've done that at before. So that's something that I'll be keeping an eye on. More than likely, though, they play it tipped out like they do for most rounds. And it's going to play a bit easier than the first couple of days, just because this is a wedge shot in. It's only 396 yards. It'll be closer to 370 towards that front left corner. And you're going to have a whole bunch of room to spin back your wedge shots. So that's I would say, an easier than both days so far. 14 is a front left pin. It's about the same difficulty as round 2, but easier than round 1. Round 1, it was in the back left corner, tucked over the bunker and close to the water. So it's still on the left side where the water's not in play, but a little bit of a longer shot in. So we'll say slightly more difficult, but yeah, marginal difference. And with the softer conditions and lower winds, I think the scoring is going to get better at 14, even though the pin might be slightly harder, right? You got to look at the full picture when we're talking about scoring average. 15 is a back left pin. This is diabolical. It's my favorite pin to watch at 15. So there's a 100% chance that I'll at least be camped out at this hole for an hour, maybe even 2 hours tomorrow, watching people hit into here. This bunker becomes a big problem to that left side pin location. And because it's a longer shot in, it plays close to 185. Now, it's a moving day setup, so there's a chance they move up some tee boxes. And I would say, because this is a tough pin location, that if there's any tee box that I've seen so far in the par 3s that's going to be moved up, this would be the best candidate for that. But we'll see if they decide to do so. And they could even move the tee box over here. Like they don't necessarily have to move the tee box up to make it easier. If they really want to fuck with the guys, they could use this back right pin tee box and then play it to the back left. It would give players a better angle in. And now that I'm thinking about it, is that what they're doing here? Because that's an awfully tucked pin location. 5 paces off that bunker is diabolical, like I said. But if you're coming in from this angle over here, kind of like we're situated on right here, it's more doable because you don't have to carry the bunker. In fact, you'd have to hit a pole to end up over there. Whereas if you're coming in from where they were the first couple of days, I don't know how you get close to that back left pin. If you miss 2 paces left, you're fucked. So I don't know. I'd be interested to see what they end up doing with that hole. Let's go to 16 next. 16 is a front right pin. This is the easiest pin by far at this whole location. Round 1, it was in the very back left, kind of in the back shelf of the pantry. It was hard to get back up there with all that slope. No longer a problem, and it's also a shorter shot compared to what you had in round 2. Let's go to 17 next. 17 is a front pin location. This is going to be harder, I'd say, than rounds 1 and 2. But you're going to see more birdies here. It's soft, so you'll get guys that spin it back and hit it close. But this pin brings in the big problem, the big numbers with the water. You saw David Ford fall victim to that. Luckily, still made the cut for us with all the eagles and birdies. he was able to post on top of that. But you're going to see some big numbers there for people that end up short. And if it's soft enough, you might even have people that hit the green and then spin it back into the water. That's something that usually only happens after rain at PGA National. And then finally, 18 is a back left pin. It's going to make this whole play long. I would say that this is the hardest pin that you can get at this hole. There's some slope just to the left of it. And because almost everyone's going to have to lay up at this hole, especially if you're not getting any rollout in the fairways, it's going to be playing almost 600 yards if they tip it out. I will say that there's a chance they also move up the tee box here. The moving day kind of philosophy is to let guys go for it, right? That's like what you had at 10. 10 was a location where we can see some more eagles. If they're going to embrace that, they could move up the tee here. They could move it back to its normal spot, maybe there, maybe even move it up the whole way over here to where you could have players that can cut the corner that are long enough and then go for it in their second shot. So yeah, I would say that there's at least like a 25% chance they end up doing so. And if they do, even though it is a very, very difficult pin location in that back left corner, scoring would actually improve at hole number 18. So I think that there's some question marks around this setup. There could be some tee boxes moved. In general, though, the locations look a little bit easier than the first couple days, which is what we would have expected for a moving day setup. That's kind of the philosophy of the PGA Tour and how they like to set up things before the grinded out, hard pin locations that we get on Sunday the very next day. So that combined with the rain, the lower winds, I'm going to put the scoring average. I think it's tough on a slate like this. So I'm still going to keep it a range. I'm going to say minus 0.5 to minus 1.5 is what I'm comfortable going with. Partly has to do with the conditions, partly has to do with the pin locations, and then also partly has to do with the fact that the cut line is going to get some of your outliers and the guys that aren't playing as well out of the picture. So that should clean up some of these metrics too. So how does that translate? The birdies are better or bogeys are worse? Not exactly sure. I'll give you guys a guess though. I think it's going to be about a 4 birdie average. That's a big difference, right? 0.75 there, but the moving day setup, the soft conditions, I think guys are going to be able to really go after it. I'm not as convinced on the bogey or worse average, though. I think that's going to be between 2 to 2.5 per round. We'll have to give a range on that one. And that's also part of the reason why the stroke range is going to be so large. And the reason why I have such a big disparity on that is if the wind kicks up, they're still going to make some bogeys. They're not calling for much wind as of right now. This is for Stellenbosch, by the way, right? We got to go back to PGA National. Just show you guys the conditions for tomorrow. So let's do HRRR. You can see it's mostly the rain in the afternoon. That's the problem. Winds before noon are sub 10 miles an hour pretty much the entire time. So yeah, we'll say 2 to like 2.5 bogeys or worse per round. And the fairway average, I think, goes up to about 8.25 per round. The green average, I'll say it'll be about 12.5 per round for round number 3. So that's what I'm working with for the boards. And we haven't seen anything on Underdog yet. So let's refresh this and see if we have some projections to deep dive, because I know Prize Picks had a board up, but their payouts are absolute dog shit. So we're obviously going to enter on Underdog if we can. And luckily, they did get a board posted for us. So let's see what we have for lines. Yeah, birdies are better. Looks like bogeys are worse. No fairway or any green props posted yet, which I don't know. With the soft conditions, the rain overnight was something that I kind of wanted to get some exposure to if we could. But we'll see what kind of value we can attack on the board. And we've got some of the odds up on Draftkings. Let's refresh that so we have that to go through as well. And yeah, we'll catch up on chat. And we're going to deep dive these boards, try and find some exposure detail. And that'll pretty much be it. So any questions, any bets you guys want me to go through, feel free to let me know. So let's see. A bunch of comments came in. So let's handle those before we deep dive the boards. Let's see. So did go through the deep dive on Joel. So we already got that one handled. He said, thanks for responding as always, Luke. He said, if Keith figured out his putting, he'd easily be in the top 10. He said, like Lowry on the first day. Could be a good look for a top 20 bet or top 10 bet from the live market. So, and by the way, I completely agree with you. To go back to the shots gained metrics, just to see if it backs up the eye test that I saw on the golf course today. Yeah, it does. Gained ball striking, not as severely as some of the other players that we've gone through before. But the big problem was him losing about 2.5 strokes short game. So yeah, I like it. He's not as extreme as an example as one of those guys that we were going through before, but he's one that fits that same description. He said, you're behind, but deep dive RNP if I haven't already. Yeah, so we haven't deep dived him. So we'll do that now for you. And even if we did, right, I wouldn't give you too much crap for that. It's totally understandable, especially on a Friday night. I know everyone's got plans. I do after this, even though they're going to have to be cut off pretty early because I'm waking up at 5 fucking a.m. Cannot believe that. RNP, though, gained ball striking, did lose with the approach play. So if we're going to nitpick it, should have been better with the second shot. But the 2 short game categories were also about a neutral. So I'm going to give him a 6 out of 10 just because he gained overall in the day, right? He gained, what was it, about a stroke to the field. But he didn't do it in a rather convincing fashion. You know, if it had been him gaining off the tee and on approach, maybe that would have been a 7 or a 7.5 out of 10. But still, I'd say better than most players in the field from that perspective. Do I think that Keith going out early gives us a nice shot? No one's really going out early, unfortunately, because it is such a small spread of the tee times. Yeah, I don't think the weather is that advantageous, unfortunately. Can I apply my DFS theory for ball striking with the short game to head-to-head matchups? Yeah, and I do that all the time. I don't know if you've noticed that with some of the write-ups that we've put out, but yeah, that's a big part of every process that I have. So yeah, it's a sharp take, and yeah, it's pretty much the same thing across the board. It's advantageous. You could use it for props, betting strokes, or even birdies are better. All of that applies. He said, just joining, he said, man, Kiefer failed you, played absolutely terrible. Hey, that's how it works sometimes. But if you're going to play a set of 150 lineups like myself, you're still going to get a few players wrong. Fortunately for us, Kiefer was our one bad play this week out of like 40 players. So yeah, if there's one guy going wrong, that means you're having a pretty good week. Yeah, Luke is dialed. Yeah, I'd say so. I appreciate you, man. Welcome on in. He said, hey, Luke, thoughts on Brooks and Rasmus for the over at 4.5 birdies? If I'm getting plus 100, it's tempting, especially after seeing those pin locations. Let me see what the DraftKings odds are on those. And excuse me. Mouth was really getting dry on that one. But let me see what DraftKings has them at. I have to imagine they're juiced over, right? So I don't know where you're getting them at plus 100. Yeah, Brooks is minus 182 towards the over. And then what is Højgaard? Højgaard is at 5.5 birdies on DraftKings. Yeah, plus 100, I'd be nuking those, man. You said it's on Bet365. I so wish I could bet on Bet365. In fact, I'm not going to do it because I love the Sunshine State way too much, but I've considered moving to a state that has access to Bet365 because their lines are absolute dog shit. Like they're the worst that I've ever seen. So yeah, plus 100 on those, I could definitely get behind. Yeah, let's have a big weekend. Let's get after it. He said, everyone, big talkies this weekend. I don't even know the reference for that, but I'm assuming, right, it means to have a good weekend at some stage. Give it to us, baby. Echeverria, Damon, maybe a little bit of Hubbard. I've gone through a couple of those players already. So if you want to go back and listen, you can see my take on those guys. We didn't talk any Hubbard, though. So I'll give you a quick little glance at that one. He gained off the tee, lost on approach, and then gained a whole bunch putting. Yeah, that's going to be a no-go for me, man. I don't like taking guys that gained 3.5 strokes putting, especially when they lost in the approach category, which is the most important that we have. So I can get behind the other two, but not so much. Good old homeless hubs, as some people call them. We'll look at some of the matchups later, but you get Dow at plus 175 with Pavon and McGreevy. I like targeting Pavon, especially because he's been horrible for quite some time. He obviously won on the PGA Tour at some point, so he's got the potential, but I think he'd even tell you that he's been dog shit for the last 6 months. McGreevy, on the other hand, is a little scary on that one. McGreevy is somebody that had a top 5 year last year. He's playing well heading into this week. He's a good approach player, so I think the soft conditions are really going to play into his skill set. Plus 175, I'm not sure if that's enough, man, because the plus 200 mark is essentially like the fair odds, right? If everyone had the exact same win equity in a 3-ball, you'd want plus 200 on everyone for that to be fair. And I feel like Zicheng Dao, even though he is playing well, he's clearly the second, maybe even the third worst player that you have in that field. You know, you could say that him and Pavon are maybe on a similar level, but McGreevy should be the clear favorite on that one. So I get the idea. I like the fact that you're going for a ball striking popper, somebody with some short game regression, but I just wonder if the odds are good enough or not. Like it feels like the DraftKings is just squeezing you too much on that sort of a bet there. Is it easier to go to bed when you know you have golf in the morning? Yeah, that's for sure. And well, actually it goes both ways for me, man. I've had a hard time sleeping the last couple of days because I'm excited to get out on the golf course. Even though I'm exhausted, like physically, my brain is just so hyped up for the rest of the weekend that, yeah, it's a struggle for me at times. But I get what you're saying, though. It's obviously something to look forward to the next day. He said, I'm riding with you, Luke, and you hope that I have a freaky Friday night. Amen to that, I guess, man. It's going to be a short Friday night, but we'll see if it's a good one or not. He said, you think Hughes plus 165 with Chan Kim and Rasmus Niergaard Peterson? So I'm a little worried about the Hughes short game regression. That's the only reason that I probably won't take that one myself. He did gain approach play, though. It's the most important category. He has that down pat with about 3 strokes gained in round number 2. And I do have a soft spot for RNP, man. RNP is a stud. I think he's going to be like a top 30 player on tour someday. But plus 165 is not the worst odds I've ever seen. Can we look at Dow? We did that earlier. So if you scroll back, you can get my take on that. But we'll look at Ford. We'll do that one. And by the way, Zeching's Dow's profile, like just to give you the short answer, great. Like 9 out of 10, great. So like if that's all you wanted from it, that's it right there. Ford, though, gained off the tee and then lost on approach, and then it was about a neutral in the other 2 categories. So this is a 5 out of 10, maybe a 5.5 out of 10 because he did gain strokes to the field. But David Ford has had like the weirdest week ever. He's had, his words, he said he had 5 balls that he's had to hit out of the mud this week. We know he had the 2 on 17. He had the 1 on 18 today. So he had 2 other mud balls apparently that I haven't even noticed over this golf tournament so far. So the shots gained metrics, round 1, by the way, horrible short game. So you had some short game regression in our favor in round 2. And that's part of the reason why he was able to clutch through and make the cut for us. So that was nice to have. Round 2, though, there's not much that we can take from the stat profile. It's pretty close to a 5 out of 10, maybe slightly better than that, as I mentioned, because he had a better than average day. But to get back to the craziness factor on Ford, the fact that he made the cut, making a 7 on 17, multiple other double bogeys over his last couple days is insane. Like that's how many birdies, eagles, hole outs, how close he's hitting it to hole, how well he's putting it from 10 to 15 feet. If he can just clean up those big mistakes, and that's a big if, obviously, because he's looked like Jordan Spieth Jr. I don't know if they're perhaps related or something like that with the kind of play that we've seen from the two. But if again, the big if there, if he can clean that up, it could be a really big round for him too. So I kind of see the upside on that sort of a play. He said, thanks for all that I do. Appreciate you, my dude. Appreciate you as well. Best of luck with everything that you're entering. He said, yeah, Lowry at plus 100 at 4.5. Oh, dude, you're making me jealous with those Bet365 lines. Those are absurd. I think the average for birdies is going to be about 4.5 per round. I think 4.25 might have been what I quoted as like the midpoint there. Yeah, you shouldn't have elite tier guys that are hitting the ball well at that same number. It just does not make sense. Davis Thompson thoughts. Let's take a look. So good old Davey Thompson. He gained off the tee, gained a very, I'm not even going to say it, a very weird number off the tee, I guess. And he gained on approach and then lost in the short game categories. We'll give him a 6.5 out of 10 with the shots gained profile. But I don't know. Anytime I see like the devil's number on anyone's shots gained metrics, I don't know. It just makes me double take. It makes me think like it's a bad sign or something. And again, maybe that's just me being a paranoid motherfucker. But there's a lot of history behind that, as a lot of you guys probably know. You had Ewert, Damon, Koepka, Homa, Lee, and Kiefer on Friday on Underdog. You said Kiefer didn't have it, but unfortunately could have been a big cash. Hey, maybe you could turn it around the next day, but I'm sure you still profited on that. And we had a comment from somebody that cash, but they weren't happy with their cash. Here's what I'll say. And this is professional telling you this, okay? So if I'm willing to have this mindset, you should be able to. If you're just doing this as a hobby or for fun, be happy with winning money. Be happy with being into the positive, making money. Those contests are only going to be won by one person. They have hundreds, thousands of entries in them, right? If one person's only going to be happy that enters that contest, you're all going to be miserable fucks. And no one wants to be a miserable fuck. So my advice to you, this is what I do myself, and I bet a lot more than most people. So me being slightly into the positive is still me making a couple $100 to a couple $1,000 on most slates. So, it's a little bit easier to be happy about that, I guess. But even if you're just grinding out, you're doing this for fun and you're making like $10 to $20 on a lineup, be happy about that. Pat yourself on the back. You did better than a whole lot of other people in that sort of a lineup. And then rather than, dragging yourself for the one mistake that you made in your lineup, give yourself some credit for actually beating the ass of 75 to 80% of the people. You don't have to take my advice. I'm not telling you how to live your life, but I will tell you that instead of being a miserable fuck, you'll have a lot more fun in life if you're able to do that sort of a thing. So that's why I'm big on the positivity around here. And frankly, it's kind of a warning to you as well. if you can't cut out the negativity, I'm just going to block you because that's how I handle it. I don't handle that kind of shit. I don't tolerate it. That's just, there's nothing constructive that comes from being a Debbie Downer like that, other than trying to make other people be Debbie Downers. And that's why I block the people that do that. I don't tolerate it. It's not something that, again, I give any sort of mental strength to. It's just a waste of time. That's for damn sure. Appreciate the feedback. How far back, in my opinion, is too far back? There's no such thing as too far back at this golf tournament. And just to give you evidence of that, Joe Highsmith made the cut on the number last year. And what did he do? He won the damn golf tournament over the next couple of days. So it might be a slightly different situation that because Austin Smotherman is so far ahead. But in theory, man, I'd say like -2s to -3s could win this golf tournament. And those guys are at that T27 mark. So I think most people would probably agree with that. But it has a lot to do with what Austin Smotherman does at the top. So what's up, Luke? Hope all is going well. It absolutely is. It's been a fantastic week. Can I see Brennan making a charge? He sets up well stat-wise for it. He gains off the tee, gains on approach, and then he's been losing with the putter so far. So for him, it's real clear what has to happen. For him to make a charge, he's got to make some putts. And he's played in South Florida quite a bit. He played on the mini tour down here for the last couple years. He's familiar enough with the surface that I think it's capable for him to bounce back. So yeah, I'm using him, and it's one of my favorite plays. Appreciate you, my dude. He said it's pretty miserable betting. Thanks for the advice. Then don't bet. If you think it's miserable betting, then I don't know why the fuck you bet, man. I have a lot of fun with it. It's why I do it as a living. I used to be an electrical engineer, and I made a shit ton of money doing so. So it's not like I had to leave engineering to come do this to make money, right? I do it because I love it. Frankly, man, if you think it's miserable, then don't bet. No one's forcing you to bet. That's for damn sure. So you don't have to do it. He said, watching Ewart was sick. You'll say that. Yeah, that was fun. He shot -7, had one of the rounds of the day. So that's for damn sure. What's going on, Mr. Lenwins? He said, bet 365 is only birdies, but DraftKings is birdies or better. Not sure if that would make that much of a swing. It doesn't. But if Koepka eagled 10, it wouldn't count for a birdie. That is a good call. But yeah, it's a very small change. And it's not the kind of change like you're seeing on the odds they have on that. And yeah, I guess I'll keep that in mind. I've never bet on Bet 365 before, but that's something that could slightly impact the odds. You're right. He said, Billy being even is criminal after seeing him at -5. Yeah, he had a really bad back nine, man. If you didn't see what happened to him in the bear trap, then shield your eyes. Yeah, he went triple bogey. Obviously, that's the big no-no there. Parred 16 okay, and then bogeyed 17 with a really bad shot there too. And then even bogeyed 18. 18's a par 5, by the way, and he managed to bogey that. That's what they call the bear trap. That's the infamous part of the golf course that you can't really count your chickens until they hatch. And it happens to a lot of people. And really, I think tomorrow it might not happen as much because it's soft. The winds are going to be a bit lower. The bear trap's going to be more like the bear honey pack or something. Like it's going to get them out there making birdies all over the place for those holes. On Sunday, though, if the wind kicks up, it'll probably be back to what we had for the first couple days there. McGreevy is striking it well, but losing putting. Is that just what you saw? Let's look at the stats. I mean, that's normally what he does. But today he was about an average in all 4 categories. So not really. I think in round 1 was more so when he did that. You can see gained about 2 strokes ball striking and then lost putting in round number 1. So yeah, did it on Thursday, but today was that 5 out of 10 stat profile that we can't really learn that much from because he was about a neutral in all 4 categories. But in general, that's the kind of player that he is, Mason. He hits the ball well, hits a lot of really good long irons, and then hits the ball close. You entered your first showdown lineup in the diamond 170 cents. You were so pumped. That's what I'm saying, man. Like, you obviously have your head on straight. You understand. And by the way, it's not just DFS that I'm talking about when I say that. Like, and again, I'm not telling people how to live your lives, but you can extend that to everything in life. People always want to look at the big celebrities or the big rich people in life, and they might buy a new car or something. And for example, and I don't want to get too philosophical about this, buy a new car. Maybe it's like, a cheap Honda that's like 20 years old. Some people would probably feel bad about buying that sort of car, right? But you give it to the right person that doesn't have anything, and it is everything to that sort of a person. It's all about perspective, right? And the issue that people have is comparing themselves to other people, right? There's always somebody that's going to, quote unquote, have it better than you. Yeah, that's life. That's reality. There's 7 billion people on this planet. There are going to be people that have it better off than you. That's just how statistics work. If you didn't, you'd be the one guy out of 7 billion that has it better than everyone else. And if you do, tip of the cap to you. Maybe you can send a few dollars my way, right? If you're in that sort of a boat. But if you're comparing yourself to everyone else, you're just going to be a miserable fuck. So yeah, I'm glad that you're able to find some joy in it. That's why I do it. That's why I love this. And that's why anytime I see those comments, I'm so passionate about it because, again, it's not just betting, it's life. Like if your mindset for betting is like that, like I worry about the rest of your life, honestly, some of those people. You did see that. He got into someone with the crowd. You're talking about Horschel, right? And that was on 15. I didn't see it in person, but I saw the interview after the fact. He seems kind of embarrassed about what he said. So that was, I kind of wish I was there in person. You appreciate you, man. Have a great night and kick ass at the Cog. Amen to that. This guy says, yes, you're saying you can get mad when you think you're going for a top 10 and get a min cash. But you see, man, that's what I'm talking about. You're comparing your results to the one guy that finished in first place. And frankly, bro, I know it feels like, oh, I could have won. Bro, so many people enter lineups in the GPPs that have 4 to 5 good plays in it, and then one guy that sucks. I mean, I think I had 30 lineups today where that was the case. Do you see me saying, oh, wow, I really should have won the GPP. I had such a nasty day? No, I won money. I had 1.7x in my GPP lineups. I cashed all my single entries today, so that was pretty sweet. More than a double up on all of those. That matters, and that's a good day, right? If your thought process or your idea of having a good day is only winning the large field GPP, like I said, just pick a new hobby, man. You're going to be miserable, and that's not going to change. Like, no matter how good your process is, my dude, you're not going to win GPPs more than once a month. At least if you're playing in the big 150 max ones. You're playing in smaller field ones, less than 100 entries, then yeah, you can win more than that. But if you're entering in the big 150 max contest, a good player is going to win once or twice a year in those kind of contests. Your expectations are just completely thrown off. And again, I'm kind of giving you a last warning at this point. Get it together, my dude. If you're going to be a negative Nancy, there's plenty of other live streams and communities for you. It's not going to be around here, though. What's going on, Mason? Did I guys see Horschel tell that guy in the crowd after drinking it? Yeah, and by the way, he called the shot. The guy that apparently was heckling him said, it's going in the water. I've got 50 on it. And then he obviously chipped it into the water. I'm not betting against that dude if I see him on the golf course. He's obviously got some sort of a genie ability going on. You placed last week on a few contests and won money. It was great. This week, not so much. It's a grind. It's a process. Yeah, not everyone's going to be a winner every day, but hey, if you've been on the community, you've been cashing out all week so far. So Greg, maybe you got to get into the Patreon page, my dude. We've been cashing out on that side of things. Say you got me pumped up with that positivity speech. Hell yeah. That's just how I look at life, man. And again, I'm not doing the whole speech. I've been through a lot of really shitty things in my life. I'm not going to talk about them here. They're personal to me. I've mentioned a couple in the past, but there's plenty more than that, right? Again, it's not a sob story, but I've also had an unbelievable amount of good things that have happened in my life. Do I spend my days worrying about the shit that's happened to me or the things that I'm grateful for? I worry about the things that I'm grateful for. And I think that my happiness levels are a lot higher than most people because I choose to do that. And frankly, if people are given the same situation as me, I think most of them would choose the prior, would focus on the things that aren't well. And again, it takes a lot of strength to do that, but that's the best way to go about life, in my opinion. Luke, my dude, can I deep dive? Not so stanky Stanger. Yeah, man, he had an unbelievable iron day. My guy, Jimmy, holed out twice. Also had another hole where he hit it to 1 foot from 200 yards. However, and this is just to show you how bad he is, other than those shots, he still only gained a 1.3 strokes approach. So that means outside of the shots where he was unbelievable today, he was pretty dog shit if he only gained 1.3 strokes to the field. So I'm happy for the guy, but I do really think he's going to come back down to earth, man. I don't think it's sustainable what he's doing at this point. He said, you're a freaking rock star, Luke. Been with you since day one. Keep up the great content. I appreciate that. He said, Horschel's an a-hole. He threw the flag at one of the volunteers. He'll never use him again. Yeah, I don't hold grudges against players, but seems like an asshole move. If you're talking about asshole, though, John Rahm's at the top end of that list. Still new to understanding the betting market, but Brooks' top 10's plus 360 at Hard Rock, with the top 10 only being a few shots off. And how is he one of the guys I don't know what you're saying at the end there, but you're saying, and how he's one of the guys that can run off of confidence differently. I don't really get what you're asking, to be frank with you. I guess maybe you're asking if that's a good bet. I didn't really see a question on that. I said maybe you wish it was like plus 425-ish. Keep in mind, though, that the Hard Rock market is with ties being like dead heated, right? So like if, for example, if he finishes, I don't know, T9, and let's say there's 5 guys also at T9, your payout's going to be peanuts on a site like Hard Rock Bet. So if you're comparing the odds at Hard Rock Bet to some of the other sites like DraftKings, Fanduel, that sort of thing around the industry, just keep that in mind, as it's a pretty drastic impact on the odds that you're being offered. But to get back to the Brooks stuff, yeah, he's in prime position. He's hitting the ball well. Finally got the putter to turn around today, obviously. That was the big thing going his way. Yeah, plus 400-ish odds seems fair. If you can boost that up, maybe you can get like a 10% boost and get it to that plus 400. That would be the kind of number that I would take on for sure. And yeah, I got you, Bob. I was just checking your head. Your comments had me thinking that you were going the other way about it, man. He said you were just saying what was in your mind. I'm just trying to fix what's in your mind, man. Because if you're looking at things the wrong way, you're going to be torturing yourself. And also, it's not productive. Like, bro, you're given so much mental space to shit that's not helping you, right? Like, you should be on to the next slate already. Shouldn't be holding on to that kind of shit. So enough with that, though. I think you get the point, and I think we're mostly in agreement anyways. Let's go through some props here and figure out what the hell we're going to enter. I do not like the pricing that we're seeing right here. I mean, all these guys are so low. You have guys at 68.5, have to shoot -3 to cover that. Even the guys at 69.5 are pure slapdicks. So although I do think the conditions are going to get easier, based on this pricing, it feels like fades might be the way to go about it. This is a golf course that, even if it does play easier, is not going to be a complete pushover. And by fades, I'd still want to be very selective about who I'd be taking. But if you can find me somebody that just hardly made the cut, maybe was putting over their head, and that's how they just snuck into the weekend, that would be somebody that I'd be willing to fade at like 69.5. Maybe like a slapdick, a lower tier player at that sort of projection. That's what I'd be looking at. 68.5s, which is mostly the elite tier players that we're seeing on the field at that number, I'd be able to fade them if they're also kind of sketchy with the form. So like, for example, like Homa's at 68.5, his form's not sketchy. But if we could find somebody at 68.5 who's a similar talent level that has a shots gained profile that maybe isn't as strong, that's the sort of fade that we could get to. So like, I like an RMP in general. I think he's a stud, but like he could be a player that we look at for that sort of thing. So let me just see what his stats look like today. If I could spell his name right, we'd have a better chance doing so. And he did lose a little bit with the approach play. It just feels like the plus EV move, even with some of these easy conditions, would be to take some of these over. So I just want to see what these lines look like on the sports books as well. I'm not a big plus EV better, at least when it comes to betting golf. And that has a lot to do with just the pricing on these books. I think the lines makers aren't the sharpest that we have. So Rasmus is -128. Homa is -146. So if you're a believer in like the plus EV value, they obviously think that Max Homa would be a better fade than Rasmus Nørgaard Peterson. But I don't necessarily agree with that, especially because Max Homa has the better shots gained profile. But like they have a Berger at that same number, and he's even money. Jimmy Stanger, look at the disrespect. He's the only one at 70.5. If everyone else at least 69.5 strokes, from what I can see on here. But a Mark Hubbard, like he was super short game dependent. If you remember, he gained over 3 strokes putting and was just kind of okay with the ball striking. He'd have to shoot -2 to cover that, which is going to be at least, I think, a half a stroke gain to the field. Again, I had the average at like -0.5 to -1.5. If it's -1.5, that's the projection that he's at, right? He's at -1.5 at that 69.5 mark. So you're essentially asking him whether he's going to have an average or below average day. And because he gained the 3 strokes putting, he's somebody that I would take to have a below average day for that sort of bet. So in fact, I want to see what his odds are too. Just going to line shop that. So he's about even money at that sort of number. Let's see what they have him at over here. So Homa's at even money at 68.5. And then, let's see, what is Hubbard, right? Hubbard is also at even money at that number. I don't make myself a slave to the plus EV value, so we're not necessarily going to avoid them just because of that. But it's good to know where DraftKings and Fanduel are putting the boards and whatnot. Now, birdies are better might even be a better way to go about this. I think the soft golf course is going to help these guys save par, but 18 had that really tough pin location, if you guys remember. 3 is going to be playing downwind, but I don't necessarily think that that pin location is a guaranteed birdie. And let's look at 10 too. 10 will be pretty gettable, especially because we think about the wind direction. Yeah, that'll be a side wind at 10. They'll be getting home at 2, especially because that's only like 550 yards. But 4.5 birdies for like, you have a lot of the field at the 4.5 mark, like you can see on here, also feels maybe a little bit optimistic. And if you can find the right type of player for a fade, I think that there are some options on here. So like, I like Billy Ho this week. He's got good course history, but to have him at 4.5 birdies feels a bit optimistic. Heck, even in Aaron Rye. Now, I'm not sure if I want to fade Rye because I have an outright on him, and I hope he makes 5+ birdies. So I don't know if I want to anti-correlate it against my exposure that much. But let's see. So Rye is actually minus 125 over. Let's look at Horschel, though. Horschel's about even money at 4.5. Let's look at Fanduel, though. I'm curious. If you can give me a plus EV value, that is also something that I like, then I'm definitely going to try and get to it. But let's see. Horschel, does he have a line? So nothing on Horschel. Who's on his Rye, right? Let's see if Rye has one. Rye does. And now here's what I wanted to see. Rye's playing well. He's also an elite tier player, right? But Fanduel has him juiced towards the under at 4.5. Now, this is rather interesting because when we go back to the strokes board, they have the strokes board priced more optimistically than DraftKings. Yet their birdie board is priced more negatively. Like, make that make sense. Like, it feels backwards, right? Obviously, if the birdie board is going to be higher, you'd expect the strokes board to be lower, but that's not the case here from website to website. So just, I don't know. I feel like maybe unders on birdies might be the play to go about it. Again, Rye, not necessarily the one that I have my eye on, but maybe somebody like a Billy Horschel. Let's see who else they have on the boards. They've got Echeverria at 4.5. Echeverria is a better birdie maker. So yeah, he's not really somebody that I want to line shop for that category, but maybe a Taylor Moore. I do want to take a look at how he played today. I know he was super short game dependent in the very first round. So that's something that could come back down to earth. And then, oh, I wish I should have gone to video this, guys, but I asked Dan Brown for a cig today, and he went to grab the carton, and I said, okay, I'm just kidding because I don't smoke cigarettes anymore. I used to for a little bit. Hit the vape, though. That's still something that I do, unfortunately. But then he was going to be willing to give me one, though, on the golf course. So I hate to bet against Daniel Brown or to say that he's like an average player in this field because he's an absolute legend. But Danny Brown, let's see, he's about even money at that 4.5 mark. I think I know how I want to handle the slate. I feel like the unders on birdies feel like the safer place because I do think that bogeys aren't going to be as common. But let's kind of look at the stats and see who's the best in terms of the shots gained profile. So let's go to Taylor Moore first. Taylor Moore had a better day today across the board, so maybe he's not the best fade candidate, at least based on the round 2 metrics. Let's look at Dan Brown. Dan lost a whole bunch of putting and then gained with the approach play. Did only make 1 birdie or better, though. That's pretty horrendous. Probably had to do with a lot of short putts that he was missing. Excuse me there. Given the fact that he lost almost 3 strokes in that category. And then let's look at Horschel too. Well, we already know what happened to Horschel, right? He lost like the 3 strokes around the green, or whatever the fuck that was, because of the 1 hole at hole 15. I'd say that of those stat profiles, that none of them are actually that good for fades. They're all half decent stat profiles, actually. I was really hoping that we would have seen more of a short game dependence from some of those players on there. You don't always get what you want, though, right? That's just how life works. So no reason complaining about it, right? Like I was saying before, no reason to give it any extra attention. Let's look at the bogey lines on here, though. So they got Smotherman at 2.5 bogeys or worse. We could have a legit choke factor going on. And this hasn't been something that I think we've talked about for a while, but being in the lead is a big problem for some of these guys. Let me see what they have the odds on this. And I don't know why I'm using these odds so much because, again, I'm not a big plus EV better for golf, at least. I use it quite a bit for football as the market's a little bit more established, what we have on these golf sites. But 2.5 bogeys or worse, I think that could be about the average for tomorrow. Maybe it goes down to like 2 per round. But somebody like Smotherman that is going to be feeling it and has also been putting over his head the first couple of days, if I was going to take an over on bogeys, that would be the exact kind of player that I'd end up doing it with. So in fact, let's throw some of those other ones that we were line shopping before back into here, and then we'll narrow it down and try and take a 2-man slip. Sorry, we like the Hubbard.
And then let's go back to birdies are better. Let's throw in the Dan Brown one. Because like if I was going to pick one of those, it'd probably be the Brown one that I like the most. And by the way, look at the payout on this slip. This is a 4-leg slip, and it's a 4.32x payout. How do they figure that when a 2-leg slip pays like 3.22x? The scam on the correlation multipliers is just ridiculous at this stage. If we're basing it on the shots gained metrics, I feel like Mark Hubbard's probably the safest fade out of all these ones that we have in here. That or maybe the Daniel Brown one. Wonder how many birdies Dan Brown made in round one. Let's look. I'm assuming quite a few since he made the cut. So he made 4 in round one, and he had, let me see. I guess we can't really check the tee time here. So he played at what? He had a late tee time for round 1 too. So he was able to do that on the harder side of the draw. What? I'm kind of split on what to do here. I feel like the Rasmus Niergaard Peterson fade is the one that we're going to remove. These are the 3 that I like the most that we've seen on here. I want to keep the Smother one in there for sure. Even though, by the way, he's minus 130 towards the under. I guess I didn't even mention that when I looked at the odds. I just kind of looked at it myself and then registered it in the brain. But he's minus 130 under, which is not what I wanted to see. I would have rather seen a minus 130 towards the over, but I still think that it'd be valued towards the over. I don't think they're accounting for the narrative, the fact that he's in the lead, the fact that he's been so putting dependent the first couple of rounds. So we'll use him, and then I guess we're stuck between the Hubbard and the Daniel play. Let's take the under on birdies on Daniel Brown, and here's why. I'm a little worried that they might do lift, clean, and place. If they do that, the scoring average could be minus 1.5, minus 2, and an average day can end up covering for him. But I will say that Hubbard prop that I had in there at 69.5, very likely still going to get entered for a slip. So these two together ends up paying 3.01x for just the 2-leg slip, which, by the way, is why that 4.3x payout for the 4-leg slip is just an absolute scam. So obviously, make sure you end up entering the best line value that you can and make sure that the multipliers aren't completely screwing you. And on this, you guys can see my max is 25. This is one of the, I'm not even going to say it, actually. It's just dumb for me to even mention what I was about to say. This won't be the only exposure that I'm getting on these 2 props, though. That's what I'll say for tonight. So we'll enter these for the 25, the over on Smotherman, the under on Daniel Brown. I don't necessarily have these as like massive line value, but based on how I'm evaluating this golf course, these are just too optimistic of projections. To have Smotherman at about the field average for bogeys with the nerves, crazy. To have Daniel Brown at over what I think the projected field average is going to be, probably a mistake, right? Having to make 5+ birdies to go over that line is asking him to have a pretty damn good day to be able to pull that off. So those would be the 2 that we take for the community tail for tomorrow. And if you guys want to see every single prop that I'm entering for tomorrow, you guys can find that on the Patreon page. That's for Underdog, Prize Picks, also Better. There's a lot of props that we've been going through and that we enter over there. And also everything that we enter on the sports books as well. So we're still going to look at some matchups before we end up calling off this live stream. But we also have a lot of head-to-heads, free balls to enter on that perspective. And it maybe showed a lot of the caches that we had there from before. If you guys want to tail all of these slips as I'm entering them, you guys can find those on the Patreon page. The golf prop and betting tier is how you guys get access to everything that I'm entering as I end up getting that exposure myself. And I'll have some matchups tonight. I'll be going through the head-to-head market, especially on Hard Rock Bet. That's my favorite market, at least to attack from that perspective. But tomorrow morning on the golf course, I'm going to be able to see the tee boxes. I plan on getting there at 7 a.m., actually just before the play starts. So I'll go see if they moved any of them up, right? 15, 18, I think are really big candidates for that tee box to be moved up. Maybe they end up, I don't know, making lift, clean, and place, right? Maybe there's a sign on the range that I can see that we know it's lift, clean, and place before the round actually starts. If that's the case, there could be some nukes to have in the morning. So if you're a part of the Patreon page, if you're watching this now, if you're not, join the Patreon page so you guys can take advantage of this tomorrow morning, but make sure that you're awake in the morning. Make sure that you're up. I won't say 7 because I'll still probably want to see the golf course a bit before I end up actually entering anything. But by the time we get to like 7:45, 8, there's a really good chance that I'm adding a lot of exposure tomorrow morning. So stay tuned for that. And because the suite I'm in does have Wi-Fi, it's pretty sweet because I'm able to enter slips. I'm able to do all my research, to even have a laptop that I was using from one of the workers over the last day to look up some of my stats. It's great to have that suite. I've never had one of those before at the Honda. I've had like some hospitality packages, but this one is by far the best that we've ever had. So by the way, Dave, if you're watching this from the foundation, I appreciate you hooking me up with the tickets for the week. And might even be getting them for the Cadillac too. That's a tournament that's down in Miami this year, of course, at the Blue Monster. If you can hook it up for that, that'd be pretty sweet as well. But yeah, make sure to stay tuned for all that tomorrow morning. I'll be deep diving the boards. I'll have that access to the internet, the chalet, to try and get some slips out there for you guys for Underdog and Prize Picks. But I did want to take a look at this board to see if they had anything else posted. So you know what? I hate the payouts on Prize Picks. I still do like the over on Smotherman because of that nerve factor. But like Pavon at 2.5, I mean, he's been horrendous for quite some time. I know he's playing okay this week because he's at T27 or whatnot. But like, yeah, he'd be an over that I'd like at that 2.5 mark. But let's look at some of the other categories. I'm not even wasting my time on pars. If you're betting pars, call the number, the 1-800-GAMBLER number. There's just no reason to be betting those unless there's just some obvious misprice and you're entering it because of that. Let's look at Birdie or Better matchups. Not my favorite category, but I at least like to see if there's anything that is just off because every once in a while they do make mistakes. Yeah, so far, nothing really standing out from that department. Yeah, nothing really there that I like personally. See, so 4.5 birdies on a whole lot of the field. In fact, even some lower tier players that you had on Underdog. So I still think the under makes a whole lot of sense on some of the guys like, you know, a Dan Brown, Horschel even. But if I liked the unders on those guys, then you'd have to love like the under on like a Damon. Damon's a lower tier birdie maker than all those guys. Tom Kim can't make a putt for his life anytime recently. Kevin Roy is far from an elite tier birdie maker. Ugh, I hate the payouts on this site, but like Steven Fisk being at 4.5 birdies, that is far too optimistic in my opinion. And I think there's a chance that they do lift clean in place, but I'm not entirely sold on them actually doing so. Florida golf courses, if you guys didn't know, drain unbelievably well. So especially a PGA National, it's got all that water, all those areas for the water to run off into. If they use the lift clean in place, then I kind of understand the pricing. At least it makes a little bit more sense to me on some of these sites. But as is, it really does not make that much sense. Like, in fact, a Lebiota at 69.5, right? If I like the over on Mark Hubbard at 69.5, then I would really have to love the over on a Hank Lebiota because Lebiota like doesn't even have full-time status anymore on the PGA Tour. Maybe he just recently earned it back via the Korn Ferry. I believe he did at least conditional status from doing so, but he's not like one of those studs. Like, I hate calling Mark Hubbard a stud, but Hubbard's had his card for like 10 years in a row. Like he's somebody that's a legit tour pro at this stage. Lebiota, not so much. So I hate this because the fucking payouts suck on Prize Picks. It's like you feel stupid entering any props there, just knowing the kind of value you can get on the other side. Let's see, do they have a Euro golf board up? It doesn't look like they do. If they had a Euro golf board up, I'd say like maybe we take some of the Euro golf stuff and then we pair it up on the Prize Pick side. It's going to be super windy for Euro. If you guys didn't see that before, it's like 40 mile an hour wind gust even towards the very end of the day. That would have been really nice to take some fades there, then maybe also fade some guys on the PGA side with some of these lines that I think are just too optimistic. But that's not the case right now. We don't have that board to go through. Maybe they do post one here in a little bit that we'll have to attack. But yeah, for me, it's going to be a lot of underdog exposure, most likely. And it's kind of a bummer because I see a lot of lines over here that I would love to enter. It's just that, you know, for example, let me show you why I wouldn't like to do it. These are just two random props. These are not ones that I'm entering, by the way. It's 2.6x. Just complete, utter fucking dog shit. And of course, it's not like the 3.01x is that much better on Underdog. It still could be a little bit better. But because they boosted the payouts by 0.5, you know, we'll take what we can get, right? We'll take the best payouts across the different kind of sites. And that's something that's really important to keep in mind with your process. But that's Prize Picks. Now let's look at some three balls. And I'm mostly looking for long shots. I know somebody was asking about Dow before at plus 175. Plus 190, man, is a lot more doable. And in fact, let me see if Hard Rock Bet has the board up. If they do, I'll bring it up here on the stream so that we can deep dive it together. But plus 190 is like definitely playable for me. The plus 175 really wasn't, but the plus 190 is a lot more fair. But let me see if they have that board actually posted. Because if they do, I'll just sign in and we'll probably even enter something together here. Let's see. So they have the three balls up. Let me see if they have the head-to-heads posted. Because if so, that'd be even better. See, I know head-to-heads, but they do have the three balls. we'll go ahead and sign in then. So just one moment. I'd prefer not to leak my shit if I can. Not that I didn't already yesterday. We did that yesterday on the stream, so it might have been too late to do that. Let me reshare this now that we have our login handled. And let's see what the odds look like in comparison. So let's do matchups. Let's Control F and find Dow. Plus 190 or more, please. Okay, that's the plus 175. Yeah, that's going to be a no-go for me. But let's see if there's any other matchups that might make sense. So we'll catch up on chat afterwards, but I do want to make sure that we can get maybe at least one piece of matchup exposure here together. Zaynhood at plus 175 is kind of tempting. Rasmus Højgaard is good, but I don't know if he's really that much of a favorite against those two kind of players. I mean, heck, even a Daniel Brown at plus 240 feels a little bit disrespected. So I'm not sure if the number is good enough to attack either of those. But if you gave me like, let's say plus 185 on a Zaynhood, I'd play that. Plus 250 or better on Daniel Brown, and I'd pretty much automatically be clicking that one too. Let's see. That's where the RNP is versus a Hughes and a Chan Kim. Then you've got a Perry versus an Eckroat and a Hostler. I've been riding the Eckroat train all week because of the course history and also his iron form. John Perry, though, is a formidable foe, but plus 185 is getting close to the point where I'd play it. Plus 190, I'd be clicking it already, but plus 185 is close to that. And let's see what he is. I don't even know why we're looking on Draftkings, by the way. You might as well just take a look at them over here. Let's see. What is Eckroat's? Eckroat's plus 190, right? And that's what I said I was hoping to see. Let's see. Are there any other ones? Let's look at the Seabez and Daniel Brown one too. Because it all kind of depends on the odds that we're getting. Seabez is plus 175, so actually slightly worse odds. And the same thing with Daniel Brown. So that one's probably a stay away. But I hate to like be only playing Austin Eckroat props this week because I've entered one every single round at this point on Eckroat for a 3-ball or a head-to-head. Did not work out for us round one. Did work out for us today. So we're about even money so far. But if we cash a plus 190, then we're going to be clearly into the positive on an Austin Eckroat for the week. So you know what? Let's look through the rest of the board, but I think there's a really good chance that we enter that one. Might not be like a full unit bet, but we'll see. Maybe it might be a half unit sprinkle at that plus 190. So you got a Grillo versus Phillips and Shank. Yeah, these odds seem pretty close to where they should be. Thompson versus Sadiate and a Suber. You got Ford versus a Horschel and a Higo. Yeah, plus 200 is not even close to enough on a Ford, but like, I don't know, if you're giving me like plus 250, plus 275, I would have been a little bit more tempted to do so. Higo, Horschel at plus 150, plus 175 are pretty terrible odds too. And this just shows you, by the way, how scam the odds are on a lot of these 3-balls. And it's why I personally prefer the head-to-head markets a little bit more. The average odds should be plus 200, right? Why the hell do you have two guys at less than plus 200 then? And then the quote-unquote guy who's the third favorite is the only one that's at that 33.3% hit rate. I mean, they're just making it very obvious, right, that they're scamming the average consumer. So just like, that's why I'm very selective about these bets. And I don't try to just like give the sports books unlimited exposure because there's such a big in-house rake on some of these markets. And I feel like a lot of people out there don't necessarily realize that. And it's not to say that like the head-to-head markets don't have rake. It's just that normally it's a little bit less. So what you see in some of the 3-balls, I feel like the casual bettors see plus money and they're just like okay playing them at times, even if the rake is, you know, higher to 20, even 25%, as opposed to 10 to 15% on a lot of the head-to-heads. Let's see, Ewert versus Moore and Smotherman. I'd say if anything there, I'd be looking at Moore because of how he played, but I can't trust him enough. Moore is a loose cannon, to put it lightly. You've got Lowry versus Ryan Stanger. I mean, I'd almost be looking at Rye on that one. In fact, I'm kind of curious what the odds are in DraftKings. So yeah, we're getting slightly better odds than what you can get on DraftKings. Lowry also slightly better odds than what you can find over there. You know what? We'll keep that one in the shopping cart for now. Not sure if it'll end up actually getting played, but I'm at least half tempted to. Next up, we got a Rain versus a Nyholm and a Lebiota. That Nyholm guy made his first cut ever, by the way, so congrats to him. I was tempted to hit him up with a congrats on making your first cut, but I don't think that would have gone over the right way if I had said that from the stands. Hodges versus Mitchell and then a Wallace. Hodges has a decent bounce back profile. And I don't necessarily think that Wallace is like a better player than Hodges these days. So I'm kind of curious with the odds on that one. Looks like the odds are the same on DraftKings, so you can get them at the same number regardless of what website you're entering on. I still like Killa Keith this week, but him being the favorite there doesn't make him the best click at plus 130. Let's see, is that one good enough to play? Let me look at the Matt Wallace stats. I think we looked at it before, but I can't quite remember what it looked like. Gained off the tee and then was a little bit of a loser in the short game. And then, yeah, we know Mitchell with the course history also was really good. Sorry, that was round 1. So let's go to round 2 so that we can look at the right metrics. Yeah, Keith lost in the short game. My bad. I also want to take a look at Hodges, but let's go Wallace and then Hodges too, just to confirm the round 2 stats, not the round 1 stuff. Wallace was a little short game dependent. So, yeah, that was a bit of a red flag when you're going through that. So is Hodges playable at that plus 225? With the big losses with the putter? I'd say so. In fact, if you can get the number on DraftKings, it's the same number on Hard Rock Bet. That's, I think, decently playable. Let's keep going through these, though. So it's a RNP versus Hughes in a Chan Kim. That's a stay away. I don't think those odds are drastically off. Or I just don't think there's any value, really, on this sort of props. Roy versus Kanaya in a Schmid. I think Schmid's the best player out of those 3, so I'm not quite sure I agree with him being the 3rd favorite. How did he play today? He gained on approach, lost off the tee, and then gained putting. Good thing for him is that he was really good with the ball striking in round number 1. What are the odds on DraftKings? Let's just make sure that we're not getting scammed with the odds in comparison. In fact, Schmid's plus 188, so he's the 2nd favorite in that one. So you know what? Let's add that one in there too. Not a guarantee that we're going to play all 4 of these, but there's a chance that we do. Let's go through Homa versus Olsen and Streelman. Yeah, those are not playable for me at like the plus 130 mark that those 2 studs were at. You have Echeverria versus a Damon and a Hubbard. Hubbard due for some short game regression, so we wouldn't want to bet him. It'd be more so an Echeverria or a Damon. And in fact, I usually like my guys a little bit closer to plus 200, but Echeverria, with the fact that he hit the ball well but lost strokes putting, could be a bit of a short game regression candidate. So you know what? We'll throw that one into the shopping cart too. So you got Fishburne versus a Wu and a Bachow. Probably butchered that last name. Rasmus versus the Seabez and Brown. We were looking at that one earlier. Then you have a Gerard versus a Brooks and a Silverman. By the way, I think this is the same grouping. Wait, is that? Wait, did that actually happen? We have all the guys playing in the same group for all 3 rounds? Or maybe it was like 1 player off or something like that. But yeah, those guys are playing together again. That's pretty crazy stuff. Did not expect that to be the case. You got Power versus a Rainey and a Young. Stay away spot. You got Castillo versus a Fisk and a Cole. Cole would be kind of the tempting one there because of Cole's course history. And let's see what that looks like. Cole's plus 176. So another value compared to what you have on DraftKings. Let's see. Smalley versus lefty Indian Brian Harmon. That's Sudarshan Yelamaraju, as we were mentioning earlier. And then Walker's at plus 300. Stay away. You have Tom Kim versus Longdong Haltong and Kazire. Let me look at Tom Kim. I think Tom Kim had a half decent day, right? And if so, maybe he's not the best fade candidate. He was a little short game dependent, so maybe he is a good fade candidate because he's not really somebody we can rely on doing that every single time. Let's look at who was the other one? Kazire I'm not worried about. Let's see how Longdong Haltong actually played. Yeah, about a neutral in the 5 different categories. Yeah, I don't think it's going to be a line value either, just because he's only at that like plus 140. Yeah, he's actually plus 132 on DraftKings. So yeah, maybe it is slight line value. I'll throw it in there too. Why not? Mao versus Brennan and Daniel Berger. Let's see. So Berger should be the favorite. The question is how big of a favorite? Because Michael Brennan's in the group as well. That's a tough one for me because these 2 are really close to each other in terms of how I handicap them. Let's see what DK thinks. So yeah, they've got Berger as the clear favorite at like plus 130-ish odds. We're going to have a lot of 3 balls, it looks like. I normally only enter like a couple 3 balls, and it looks like I have a lot that I'm liking, which is kind of dangerous, but dangerous in a good way. Then they got Ziching Dow, Matthew Pavon, and Max McGreevy. McGreevy being the favorite, and then yeah, Dow's the plus 175 that we're going through before. You know what? There's 8 of them that we have on there. Okay. Let's do that. Let's put $100 on all of them. Let's see what ends up happening. And obviously, we do not have to cash all of those to end up being profitable. But if we hit on of those 8, I don't know, probably 3 of close to 3. I guess it depends on which 3 end up hitting. We'll be into the positive there. So obviously, you guys can find all the different matchup bets that I'm entering for tomorrow over there. And I'm not usually a big 3-ball guy, but I found some odds that I thought were favorable this time around. So, I'm not just going to like not enter them because I don't like the category. If there's value to be had, then I'm going to enter some props. But when we get to head-to-head market, which should be posted on Hard Rock Bet at some point, I'll be taking a look at that and to see if there's any specific value that we can enter there as well. And historically, that's where I like to enter a lot of my exposure. So there's probably a good chance that there's at least a few other sportsbook bets that we're mixing in as well. But it's catch up on chat. We're already almost 2 hours into this. Holy shit. A lot of questions and a lot that we had to talk about, I guess. So still glad to be able to bring you guys all the content. But let's go through those last second questions and then wrap this thing up because I've got to get some sleep to get out there at 7 a.m. But let's make sure that nobody has any questions before we get on out of here. Where would we leave off? So you said you can't type, need your glasses. Thank you. It might have been me too, man. Like I'm terrible at reading the questions. You could probably have told that by now. So it's not completely your fault. You said you're tired of losing money on picks. You will subscribe to the Patreon again. You had me in the first half there because I was like, what do you mean? I was like laughing. I was like, bro, what? Yeah. Join the Patreon page if you're tired of losing because we've been winning a whole lot over there. You had me in a blender for a second because I was like, what do you mean, bro? You said Bob needs to get on some depression meds. Oh, God, you don't got to flame him that much, my man. And you said he's got some bad energy. That's all right. Not everyone's always going to have the best energy. I didn't always have the best energy either. So, I totally understand it. And that's part of the reason why I went through that, too, is so that maybe we can help him get back on track, right? Because, sometimes it just takes a nudge from somebody else to get back to it. So, yeah, don't be flaming him, right? I kind of did so myself, so I should probably be saying that to myself too. But let's give him some love back, right? Appreciate you, Uncle TK. He said, you got crazy Nick Shickley and Luke have never been together. Are they the same person? Oh, God. I've done that a few times, actually. Yeah, we look pretty alike, and we're both from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. He's a lot better at golf than me, though. So if you put us on the golf course together, you'd be able to tell the difference. But yeah, I see the resemblance, to put it lightly. Under 11.5 pars on Prize Picks is plus EV. Could pair them with 3x with anything. Yeah, I guess it depends on the slate, right? It depends on the value. Not just 11.5s aren't going to be plus EV every single time. That's just not the case. But maybe you mean just for this slates. And yeah, you're saying you can pair with anyone for 3x. Here's the issue with that, Tommy, right? You say that 3x payout like it's a good thing. It's not. The 3x payout is significantly worse than underdog. Underdog slips, even if they're correlated to 3.22 to 3.5x, a slip with an under on pars, by the way, has no correlation going on with it. So you're getting the 3x payouts because you should be getting a 3x payout, right? It's an uncorrelated prop. And then the other thing I want to throw out there is that the 3x payout's dog shit compared to what you could be getting elsewhere. So yeah, it's not plus EV, man. Unless you're getting minus 150 to minus 200 on those par unders, that's not the case. Is that Smotherman isn't the greatest at avoiding bogeys? You love that. Yeah, that's my thoughts too. And man, the putting stats, I love Smotherman. That's why I call him Smother Daddy at times. The most out-of-pocket nickname on tour. But I'm not afraid to say some out-of-pocket stuff every once in a while. But yeah, Smotherman gained with the putter today. Also gained a whole bunch with the round number 1. When that comes crashing down, he's going to make some bogeys. So I hope that's tomorrow. Yeah, Marty Dow's setting up well, man. I have him in some lineups, and he's normally not in my exposure. So I'm taking the plunge for tomorrow. Hopefully it works out. Whether our platforms have head-to-head versus 3-ball, I'm actually not sure that every sportsbook that has it or not. I only enter on Hard Rock Bet, so that's my expertise. But Draftkings, just to show you this, does have it. So if you have access to Draftkings, you're going to have access to the 3-ball matchups. And I actually had a question from somebody last night. So if you're somebody that hasn't seen this before, you're not the only one, I promise you. But Draftkings, if you open this tab, they take the 3-balls and then they just break them up into head-to-heads instead. So I use these odds, by the way, to compare to Hard Rock Bet, I should say. And the reason why I really like the Hard Rock Bet head-to-head markets is that the odds that you have on Draftkings, I think Fanduel even posts them every once in a while, so you can use those for comparison, are oftentimes way different to what you get on Hard Rock bets. So that's where you can find that. And there's usually a lot of value on that as well. He said, you're late to the party. All right, better to have you late than never. Welcome on in, my dude. Yeah, me too. I've got to get to bed soon as well. So we're going to cut this out here in just a few minutes. He said, thanks, Luke, for the breakdown. Any hate watch candidate that I like? By the way, that's my favorite question every day, is who we can bet against, right? Let's look at it. We want somebody that gained putting and then lost ball striking. If we're going to try and bet against somebody, Seamus Power looks like the poster child for that, because he lost 1.5 ball striking and then gained over 5.5 between the around the green and the putting. Yeah, it's Seamus. I'm not sure what kind of market you could fade him in, but I'm sure you could get creative with that. He said Brooks 190 is tough. You'll just sprinkle it in for fun with breakfast. He said Gerard is like minus 105. Oh boy. Yeah. Plus 190 seems okay. Yeah. At least if it's like just compared to the other books, and if it's within reason, I can get behind that. He said Killer Keith still untipped the waiter. I don't know if that's true, but yeah, if he is not tipping the waiters, that's not a good sign for him. Any promo code to try your stuff? So here's the take on the promo code stuff. No promo code. So to answer your question, no. But here's why I don't do promo codes. Because if you have promo codes, it's just marketing, right? And I like being transparent. I like being blunt. I like selling my stuff for what I think it's worth. The price will only change when like every couple years for inflation, right? Like and I only do it every couple years when I raise the prices. It happened in 2026, for example. There will be no other price changes. You can get a discount, I will say, if you do an annual subscription. I believe it's a 15% discount if you do it that way. But no, man, I charge the same. I don't have to say like, oh, it's a 50% discount and then run a 50% discount the entire year, like you see all these other sites doing, right? Like they've always got some sort of code out, right, to get the best price. Why not just offer the best price and make it consistent throughout the year, right? Like you don't got to do all this marketing tactics and scheming, right, to try and make money off your subscribers. So that's why I don't do that stuff, right? And by the way, you're talking to a former salesman here. I used to sell cutlery when I was in college. You guys know that company Cutco, right? I was unbelievable at fucking doing that. So trust me, I know how to do all the sales tactics and the marketing shit up the wazoo, like better than most people can. But I don't like doing it in this space because I don't need to, right? I know that my results, my sheets kind of speak for themselves, my results and whatnot. And I don't have to be salesy because being salesy, it's not always deceptive, but like selling in nature is kind of deceptive. Like it's just like you're hyping up the value as much as humanly possible so that things buy it, right? I think that it should just be a natural decision. In fact, when I was a salesman, that's what I did. I tried to actually help my customers instead of just trying to sell them as much as I possibly could. That's what would have been the best for my wallet. I tried to solve problems that they had. So for example, they were somebody that ate out a lot, buying cutlery or buying knives, which is what I was selling, would help you save money by not spending out for Uber Eats as much, right? Like you can solve problems that way and not be deceptive about it. That's what I'm about. Sorry, it was a long answer for the question that you gave me, but that's why I don't have any promo codes on my shit, because I think a lot of the sites that do that stuff, not gonna say that much about it, it's kind of sketchy. That's just me, right? It's kind of like the Walmart thing where like everything's always on sale. It's like just post the real fucking price. Like everyone knows that it's on sale, right? You said never catch me live, but just wanted to say I appreciate what I do. Hey, appreciate you for the kind words. You must be part of the late night crew. We know we got some morning crew members too, but the late night crew is also solid. He said you're very smart when it comes to all this golf stuff, and it's helped you tremendously. Love to hear it. And yeah, let me know if you have any questions in the future, even if you're not catching them live, by the way, because I haven't seen your comment before, like with any questions. You can ask them after the fact, and no guarantees I always end up getting to them, but I do my best when it comes to that, answering stuff after the fact. He said, yeah, the under 11.5 cars for Shane Lowry's minus 172. For sure, then. Yeah, if you're getting like minus 170, then yeah, that would be plus EV for sure. I was just saying like in a vacuum, right? Like just 11.5s in general wouldn't be. But yeah, if you're talking about minus 150 and above odds, I'd even say like if you're getting them at close to minus 150, those might be playable for that. It still sucks that you're only getting 3x. Like Prize Picks, man, I'm trying to play as little there as possible so that they kind of get the idea that they need to up the payouts and kind of get on par with an underdog. And obviously my own action is not going to make them change that. I'm not fucking delusional. Like I enter bigger slips than most people in the industry do, but that's not going to
one customer is not going to change a multi-million-dollar company's strategy, right? But if a lot of people do what I do, and I'm not the only person, right, that's scaling back their exposure on Prize Picks, then there's a really good chance that they have to change those payouts. So that's part of the reason why I'm kind of giving so much pushback on the Prize Picks stuff, is because we should not be incentivizing them to give them the payouts that they are. Unless, like Tommy was saying, you can make it work with the payouts. Like you find something that is heavily plus EV, then it might work out. And in fact, to go back to that board, like, I thought there were some like fade values that made some sense. I'm not going to do it myself because I'm trying to stay away from Prize Picks, but that would be how you would do it, right? Like maybe you take the under on Shane Lowry pars and then some of those overs on strokes for like the guys at 69.5 that I liked. Like, I think that's somewhat viable for sure. Alrighty, guys, that is all I've got for the live stream. We've made it to the 2-hour mark. I am definitely cutting it off at there. At this point, we're looking at like 7 hours of sleep, which is pretty close to what I was hoping for. So let's cut it off there. I'll see you guys tomorrow night for the round 4 live stream, covering everything that we did here for Sunday's action. So for Sunday, we're going to have the placement points in play. We'll talk about all of that for DFS. On the prop and the betting side, same thing that we talked about here, underdog and Prize Picks, all the matchup bets for Sunday. Make sure you stop on by for that. But if you subscribe, you'll get notified when we go live, and also you'll be able to watch all the replays after the fact, so you guys don't catch any of this free content here on YouTube. Anything on top of the free stuff that we've talked about here, anything else that I'm doing for tomorrow, that can all be found on the Patreon page. That includes the projections. It's got my entire player pool, also the projections there. That can be got via the Golf DFS tier, or all of my betting exposure, which we're going to have a lot posted tonight. But tomorrow morning, when I'm on the golf course, we can see the tee boxes, the pin locations, and maybe even a lift, clean, and place notice ahead of the fact. Make sure to stay tuned for that on the Patreon page as well. But that's all I've got, guys. Smash the like button if you guys haven't already. You've made it to the 2-hour mark. If you haven't smashed the like button, I don't know what the hell you're waiting for at this point. But do so if you haven't already, and let's have ourselves a moving day.